Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. I almost said welcome back to Kyle's Corner, but this isn't that. That's just how much I do that. Thank you guys for joining me. I'm joined with my friend Ben here, and we're doing something a little bit special today. That was Ben's idea, actually. So I'm going to lay out what we're doing and why we're doing it this way, uh, which is that I finished all of Stephen King's bibliography in 2023, and then in 2024 read You Like It Darker, his short story collection. And Ben has just recently gotten into Stephen King more, and he asked me to do a tier list because I haven't done one. And I said that I can't, like, I use a Chromebook for my computer, and I cannot figure out, like, I don't think there's a way to screen record slash screen capture on this. Like, I've Googled it, I've tried to figure it out before, which has just prevented me from doing tier lists. So if anybody watching this does know how to do that on a Chromebook, please leave a comment and tell me how, because I could not figure it out. So I just haven't done any tier lists, which sucks because I would really like to do some tier lists. And Ben was like, why don't we do it live and I can share my screen and you can just tell me where to put it. And then to make that more interesting, Ben, who has only read, have you read 3 Stephen King books?
And a couple shorter ones.
Okay, so he's only read a couple of the books. He's going to try and guess where I'm going to put them based on just like what he's heard of the book and the vibes and stuff. And some of them he doesn't know anything about. So hopefully that'll be fun. How wrong he is on some of them. And other than that, I don't think there's anything. I will say we did not include Dance Macabre because I
Oh no,
have
it's
on
in there.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, we can. Have you read some of that?
Yeah, I read like the first like 3 chapters. So.
Okay.
But I guess when we get to it, I'll explain my reasoning for not originally including it. But all right. So if you want to share your screen, we can start this up.
All right.
Kev is here, making
Let the
suggestions already.
games begin.
Okay, so let's see. So I think this is mostly in chronological order. Is that
Yep,
right?
for
Okay.
publication order, and the tiers are set up. S, A, B, C, D, and Rage tier. I know Kyle despises Rage. It also makes sense as the bottom tier. And so
Yes.
that's our bottom tier. I don't think... Oh, no, I'll leave it up to you. It'll be harder to manage with me putting things in if you want to rate stuff within tiers. Do you just want to things go into a tier and we don't rank within, or do you want to rate them
No,
within?
I'm gonna try and rank them within. Like if it's
Okay,
just close, but like I'm sure at the end we'll do a little bit of reorganization. But I'll just tell you,
yeah,
like,
okay.
we'll
Yeah.
move this between these two. I'm sure it'll be fine.
I personally really love ranking within. Like my brain doesn't work in like the tier categories. It works in total ranking, so that's good.
I'm the same way. So
I like hearing that. And this is also set up to be the B and C are the middle tiers here. There's not a single middle tier, so you will have to make kind of judgment for ones that are in the middle. Were they more slightly positive or more slightly negative, to whether you want to go for the B or the C tier.
sounds good.
All right.
So what is first? I believe it's
First is
Carrie, right?
Carrie.
Yeah.
Now,
All right. Well, so what do you think?
so he's young. This is like one of his first books. I've heard though that people tend to like it, and his early horror stuff are big hits with people. I think this one's going to be a solid B tier for you.
Well, you're starting off on the wrong track here, because you're not that far off. Carrie, I think, is like if you were to put like his most popular books and stories in a list, Carrie is the one that I think is the worst. I don't think it's bad. I've actually read it twice because the second time I read it, I wanted to be like, well, maybe like if I give it a second chance, and I liked it maybe slightly more. But my problem with Carrie the book is the way it's framed, which is that at the beginning of each chapter, you get a little bit of information about what happens at the end of the book.
Oh.
And it's like in forms of like newspaper clippings and like interviews with people that were there at the incident. And so by the time you get like 60% into the book, I feel like you know exactly all of the, like, it's not even like it gets so
Weird.
tensionless that by the end of the book, I feel like there's no like it just plays out exactly like all the information you've already gathered, which I just thought was a weird choice. I feel like a later Stephen King wouldn't have done that. So I will put it in the C tier for now.
Okay. Slight surprise there for me. And all right, next up is Salem's Lot, which is one of the few I have read. So this is coming from an informed place.
Okay,
I thought
there
it
we
was
go.
I really liked it. I thought it was solid. little rough around the edges, maybe, which I expected from an early career King book. But this is one of his most widely regarded ones. I think this is going to be a strong A for you.
Okay, well, you are wrong once again. This is S
Oh,
tier all the way, Ben.
ooh,
Like, put that up
okay,
right at the big
okay,
boys, right at the top.
okay.
Salem's Lot is great. I have to say, like, early Stephen King, like books that I read from Stephen King that I loved originally. I don't know the exact amount of times I've read them because I didn't count, but I've read Salem's Lot at least 5 times. I
Oh,
love
wow.
that book. I think the building tension is great. I love the way that the horror slowly creeps in and like you get all the townsfolk and like weird things start happening around town. I do think like my criticism of Salem's Lot would be that I think the like central relationship is just not, it's just not one that has ever spoken to me. But I'm just not there for that. And I just think it's an excellent take on vampires. Just a great book. I super recommend it.
Yeah.
And the new movie is terrible in every way. So don't watch that.
Well, yeah, as a newbie to King, I thought that was a solid first book for me that I did with King. And
Was that your
yeah,
first King?
yeah, that was my
Yeah.
first one, and then did Apt Pupil. And actually, the one you don't know that I read is I made an attempt to read Rage.
I do
I
know
was
this.
like, I tried it on ebook once, and I was like, that's an interesting premise, like King doing like inside a school where there's like a school shooter, taking over a classroom of hostages, and I couldn't believe how awful the execution of that was. I thought it was horribly done, tasteless, and I did not finish it. I DNF somewhere in the middle. This would go in my rage tier, and I know it also makes you rage.
So you missed the worst parts of this fucking book, which is unfortunate. I mean, it's fortunate for your sanity. The end of this book is absolutely. I'm going to tell you what happens at the end of this when we're done. This book is terrible. It is by far the worst Stephen King book he's ever written. He ever will write. If Stephen King breaks his hands and tries to write a novel with his teeth next week, that book will be better than Rage. If literally somebody blindfolds him and has a monkey like just hit him in the head while he's writing a book, it will be better than Rage. Rage is a piece of shit. It should have never been written. It definitely shouldn't have been published. It fills me with rage. It is so like, so okay, I'm being over the top because I know it's fun, but like my actual criticism for it is I think that it is just poorly written, and I know it was like really early on in his career. I think like even just like the way he writes dialogue between people feels terrible, and the premise, it's just disrespectful. Like I don't know how else to say it, and I'm usually not one to cry foul. I'll be like, oh, like an artist exploring, a fictional scenario, but it just reads as so like forgiving of school shooters in a way that I cannot get behind. And it's the only time there's a lot of things that people give for reasons for why school shooters could do the thing that they do. And the real reason is, things going on inside them and interacting with the world. But people will be like, oh, they like metal music, so they're gonna shoot up a school. And that's just ridiculous. This is the only thing I've ever seen where I read this and I was like, I could see if somebody was getting there, why this could be a dangerous situation or a dangerous book for them to read. And I fully agree that Stephen King should have let this go out of print. He should have never printed it. It was a terrible decision. Tabitha should have stopped him. The bottom of Rage tier for sure. Just awful, terrible.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm right with you there. I couldn't believe how bad that was. And
Yeah.
it kind of stopped me from
Alex
continuing
knows.
King.
Alex is like, I'm here. Yeah. Oh,
It
Rage
kind of stopped
sucks.
me from
Yeah.
continuing King for a little while, but I eventually picked back up with I think it was Pet Cemetery was my no 11/22/63 was my
Yeah,
next
because
one
we
after
buddy
a
read
while.
that one.
Yeah.
Derry,
All
you should
right,
read Salem's Lot.
we have The Shining. Now this book gets super mega hype in King's oeuvre. It has the famous movie adaptation, which I have not seen. I need to see the movie. I need to read the book. But man, based on the hype this book gets, you do like his horror stuff. I think it's gonna be it's tough A or S. I think it's gonna be an S tier for you.
It is a nice tier. Yeah, no, it's good.
Uh,
I think I like it less than Salem's Lot, so you can put it behind that.
okay.
But it is
Okay.
very good. Um, I think it's a phenomenal horror book. Like I think, like I don't actually. It's funny because Stephen King is one of my favorite authors. I don't really read him like for quote unquote horror. Like I think he does horror very well, obviously. But I
Yeah.
love his characters and the way that they react to the horror. I feel like that's what makes his books worth loving so much. But I would say for the horror aspects, I feel like The Shining is great. I remember vividly reading it when I was 15 years old, and there's like a scene in a play structure. If you know, you know. And I was terrified. Like I was reading it at
Ooh.
like 10 p.m. or something, and I was just like, I gotta stop reading this. This is absolutely horrifying. Yeah,
I will say
just a
that
great
the
book. I've
scenes I've
probably read
seen
it.
of the movie, the scenes I've seen online just over the years, or the stills, the little moments, it does look terrifying. Like I am not one for really horror movies, or like I will get frightened easily. It looks absolutely frightening. I've stayed in a hotel in New Zealand at one point that was like isolated and out of the way, and I stayed with my friend. We were the only ones staying in this like older wing of the hotel, and my friend who had seen the movie was like, "This is right out of The Shining." I think this would really scare the crap out of me.
Yeah, it's scary. I will say, like, it's scary in an insidious way, which I think is like it's not a very graphically scary book, which is why I would recommend it to people. I mean, obviously, horror is personal, so whatever horror book is scariest to you is going to be like just depending on your own like personal scare factors. But like I would say, generally speaking, it's not gory, which I think a lot of people think Stephen King's books are. So I think it's a little bit more of a safer pick if you wanted to try his horror books than some of his other choices. But yeah,
Mm.
The Shining is one of his
All
classics.
right, man. So far in his early career, 2 in the S tier. Love it. Love it. All right, we have another early career one, The Stand. Now, I do know that you love this book. I don't know if we're counting this as the unabridged or the abridged. You can make a judgment on that. Unabridged, maybe, is how we're counting it. That's the one
I feel like
you
that's the
read.
way that King wanted it, and that's the one in circulation. So we should do unabridged, and that is
All
top
right.
of S tier for sure, without a
I
doubt.
I knew it was going in S tier. I didn't know where though.
Oh
So
yeah,
top
sorry.
of S
You,
tier.
in my head, you
But
were
I
like,
knew.
"I
I
know you love
knew.
it," so I was like, "Yeah." So I didn't let you
I
finish,
knew.
but
Yeah. Okay, but to the top. Okay. So
yeah,
you are a big Stan.
The Stand was my favorite book for like 8 years. Like, well, no, that's
Ah.
not true. Storm of Swords was my like it was. I guess it would have been my favorite book for like 2 years because I read Storm of Swords a couple years after. But it was my favorite non A Song of Ice and Fire novel until like pretty recently. So,
Are
yeah,
you
Kev
the stuff about like
disagrees.
the stuff about like the rambling interludes and character stuff like that doesn't bother you too much?
No, it's what's interesting is that like there's a lot of things I don't like about the stand that much. I just don't care. Like, and this is why,
Ah,
when people
yeah.
like I inherently maybe it's because all of the things that I love are like flawed in some way, or it's just the way my brain works. But I'm just like, yeah, like there's things that I love about a book
Yeah.
or I don't like about a book, but I still love it. Like the chapter with the kid, I would just wholesale take that chapter out. Like I just hate it. The kid is the worst.
Yeah, you
I
gotta
hate
remind me
him.
of which chapter to skip when I do the stand.
No, no, no. You're not allowed to do that. You have to experience it. At the very least, you have to get a little bit of that happy crappy so that you know why I dislike him.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
actually
yeah, yeah.
so just like as a vague like as I mentioned it, and some people won't have read the book. The kid is a character that only appears in one chapter of the unabridged or yeah the unabridged version. And he does a really heinous, awful thing in that chapter, and most people don't like him for that thing. And I'm not saying that's not a bad thing, but I also just hate him as a concept of a character. Like
Hmm.
the way he talks, he drinks Coors beer. He says, "How about that happy crappy?" every second sentence, and he'll be like, I'm going to Vegas. Don't tell me, I'll tell you." And then he just keeps repeating, "Don't tell me, I'll tell you." I just hate him. I just fucking hate him. And I also don't like the climax of The Stand very much,
Oh wow,
but
okay.
I just love the characters. I love like I don't know, like it just is such a good book to me about the way people can come together and also like I don't know, I just love the characters. And at the end of the day, I've always just been somebody who is really drawn to characters. So it's
And
always
it's very
spoken to
mature
me.
of you to be able to acknowledge flaws in something and still love it for what you do love it for, and to not need something to be perfect for you. So that's something I aspire to with how I approach art. So
Yeah.
it's very mature perspective.
Derry, I absolutely do not like the kid, just to be clear. Tanner is here for the impending Dark Tower bad takes. Relax, Tanner.
Ooh.
Okay.
All right, we have Night Shift. Is this a short story collection?
This is a short story collection. I have it right here actually because I started
Okay, I
rereading it.
know
So
I know less than nothing about this. I have heard less than nothing about it. I don't man, I'm gonna just guess B. I mean, this is early career. You've liked a lot of stuff around now, so I'm gonna guess B tier.
okay, so this is one I read. This is the first short story collection I read by him. And I'm looking at the because I had it literally right next to me, so I'm looking at the contents
Mhm.
right now just based on the names. And so I would have read this when I was 14, and I have not
Yeah.
reread it. So
Oh,
my opinion
yeah.
on this is going to be very vague.
Been a while.
That being said, I recognize a lot of the names of like I can think of what stories like over half of these are. And
Mhm.
for me, like the fact that I read this like 15 years ago, like 17 years ago, however long it was, and I can still be like, oh yeah, I remember what story Night Surf is. I remember what I Am the
Oh,
Doorway is. The
wow.
Mangler.
Yeah.
I feel like I could tell you the whole story of the
That's a good
Mangler.
sign. That's a good sign.
Jerusalem's
If this
Lot is a great one. Children of the Corn, The Man Who Loved Flowers
Wow.
is great. So I have
If
to say
short
that I have to put this in
Wow.
A tier because
Wow. If
while it's
short
been a long
stories are
time,
Yeah, if they're making that mark in your memory, that's says a lot.
King does very good short stories. Like all of his short story collections have really good ones. But like I think that that might change once I reread it. But I also
Mhm.
know that if it's sticking in my memory that much, I have to at least
Yeah.
respect the fact.
Yeah,
And that
yeah.
was his first short story collection, so he came out really strong.
Wow, no, I love it. Alright, maybe I gotta check out the King short stories. Alright, next we have The Long Walk. I do know you have praised this to me in the past. I think it's going in A, most likely.
Bottom of S tier.
Bottom of S. Oh, wow, love it, love it.
Yeah.
Alright, let's get that up. Let's get that up there.
Yeah, The Long Walk is the Stephen King book I've read the most, but that's mainly because it's short.
Wow.
Like,
Yeah.
I've probably read it like 7 times. It's also like the only Stephen. I made a mistake early on in my relationship with my wife, which is I wanted her to read Stephen King, and at the time I wasn't as good at recommending books. Now I would choose a different Stephen King book for her. I would choose several Stephen King books
Yeah.
for her first. But at the time I was thinking this is short. Like you should read this one because it's short and it's good. And she was just like, yeah, I don't really like, it's like very 18-year-old boyish like thoughts, and it just like kind of gives me the ick. And she has not
Mhm.
read a Stephen King book since. And I just like that was a huge mistake. I really should have chose
Yeah.
differently. But I love The Long Walk. I think the simple premise of just these 100 boys having to walk until there's only one of them left, and the psychological makeup of how like they're deteriorating as they go, and like Garrity, the main character, is like um kind of narrowing in his focus of like what's important to him and how he's dealing with the fact that this is like he thinks he's not going to live. Like as he's walking further, he's like, there's no way that
Yeah.
I'm gonna, like, this is terrible. And it's just like a very simple but like horrifying situation that I love. And I auditioned for the movie last year, so I reread it. um and yeah, it's just a great book, and I'm looking really forward to seeing the movie. They filmed it near me, and I almost drove an hour and a half just to go watch Mark Hamill on set. But then I realized that they closed off the whole set. It was
Yeah.
in like a provincial park, and everybody was like, Mark Hamill's there filming, and I was like, I want to go see this, but they closed it off, so I didn't go. But great book.
Oh man, you're getting me pumped. I need kind of a new book to start, and this might be what I need right now. Like I can feel I'm kind of in the mood for it, so I might read The Long Walk starting today.
Yeah, you should. It's very short, and I highly recommend it. It's a great. And like also I should say it was originally published as Richard Bachman, and so was Rage. This was when he
Ah,
was doing his
yeah, yeah.
pseudonym stuff. So
All right, next is The Dead Zone. I know very little about this other than that for big Stephen King fans, it's usually well liked. I don't really even know the premise. I think it's maybe a B for you.
can you go up again? Let me see what's up there.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I'm gonna put this above Night Shift at the top of A.
Oh, an A. Okay, solid, solid. Like it.
This this might go to the bottom of S when we're done. I have to see. I think it's top of A. I've read it a lot of times. I do really like it. I reread it in 2023 during because the Stephen King books I had left were ones that people don't talk about as much, so a lot of them weren't that great. And so
Mhm.
halfway through doing that, I was like, do I even like this author anymore? And I just reread The Dead Zone, and I was like, oh no, Stephen King is very good. So The Dead Zone, I would say my criticism of it would be that it is meandering, and I think it's meandering intentionally, but I do think that it is a little bit of a detriment to the book. But the premise of The Dead Zone is this guy gets into he has a coma, like he gets into an accident, and he's in a coma for I think 3 years. And when he wakes up, he can get like premonitions of things that are going to happen. He has this dead zone in his brain that kind of gives him like just visions or just like feelings that something's going to happen. And he wakes up from his coma and his life has
Oh,
changed. His girlfriend has started dating somebody else, and all of these different things has changed. His mom has gotten is changed way differently because of his accident, and he's trying to get his life back together, and he's trying to figure out what to do with himself. And because of that, there's a little bit of a listlessness to the beginning of the book, especially the middle. Before he consolidates on what he wants to do with his time. I do think The Dead Zone is very prescient with today's times and political structure. Like it was written in the 70s or early 80s maybe, but it's very relevant to today, which can be a positive or negative depending on your current feelings of the situation. Um, but yeah, it is a very political book in like
Mhm.
in a certain way. I really like Johnny Smith, the main character, and I thought the villain was very easily hateable, and I just think it's a
Mhm.
solid Stephen King book.
Wow, the premise sounds really interesting, honestly, to me. So that's I have it. I wanna give that one a read.
Nice.
Okay, I love how much we got in the S&A tier so far.
Yeah, you could
All right.
tell that his older stuff is where it's at.
All right, Firestarter. Oh man, I don't know anything about this one. Because I know almost nothing. Don't hear hate or love too much either way. I'm gonna go B on this one. Do I finally have one in B?
No, you don't. You have one in D.
Oh, oh wow.
I don't like Firestarter. I think the first like maybe 50 pages of this book are really good, and then I don't know about really good. It's very readable. Like it's an interesting situation, and then from there, it doesn't go the way that I want it to go. He has actually, so he wrote The Stand first. Here's okay. I'm gonna tell you what a really minor thing that super annoyed me about this book. He wrote The Stand first, and he clearly conceived of the character of the kid, and then he had to write the kid out. So that in the original version of The Stand, the kid isn't there, and then he writes Firestarter, and he just like inserts the fake kid. So there's a
Oh
cab
no.
driver in like the third chapter that just speaks exactly like the
Oh
kid.
no.
So he'll be like driving this guy, and he's like, "How about that happy crappy?" And then it'll be like, "Don't tell me about you." And I'm like, "No, don't give me this fucking
Oh
PTSD from this
no.
character I hate." So I really didn't like that. That isn't
That's
that big of a deal, but
amazing.
I just
That's amazing Stephen King lore, by the way. Oh, that's great.
um,
That's great.
so yeah, just not. I also heard the movie's terrible, so that sucks.
Okay. And that one is it adult? I know it's like a young adult protagonist, right? Who can like has fire magic. Is that like is it an adult book?
Um, it is an adult book, mid
Oh
started.
yeah.
Yeah, good job, Ian. So yeah, I guess I should tell people the premise. So the premise of Firestarter is there's this dad and this kid on the run, and the kid was experimented on and can start fires with her mind, and they're on the run from the government, and you get flashbacks of how they got in that situation and like the dad of the bomb and what's
Oh, so
happened
it's like a
since.
thriller. Okay, so it's like a
Yeah, it's like
thriller.
it's
Yeah.
like a thriller, and it's just not one of his best, and pretty forgettable if I'm on. I actually DNF'd it the first time, and then when I decided to finish all of King's books, I went back and forced myself to finish it, and it just wasn't for me.
Oh wow. All right, that's a no go. That's gonna be low down on my Stephen King TBR. All right, Dance Macabre, which I do want to include because it's here and you've done a little of
Yeah,
it. Why not? Um, is this nonfiction writing about the horror genre?
yeah, it's
I
just deeply uninteresting to me, and
I
I
think
know
you're
that I'm
gonna
trying
put
to
it in
be.
D.
Yeah, because I won't put it in rage because it didn't make me angry, and I didn't read that much of it. It's just that like I've tried to read it actually twice, um, and it's just not what I'm interested in. Like, and because it's nonfiction, it's very niche. It would be like if like Brandon Sanderson wrote a book about like building motorcycles. Like I'm like, yeah, man. Like I know you're Brandon Sanderson, but like I don't care about building motorcycles. Like it just doesn't seem relevant to the other reasons that I read him. Like I know it's because he's reviewing the horror genre and stuff, but it's also only one of his two nonfiction books.
Mhm.
And I just when I was finishing his books, I was like, I don't want to force myself to read something that's like
Yeah,
I. It's not even like it's bad. Like it's probably a good book, but it's just so deeply uninteresting to
yeah,
me that
yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't want
yeah.
to read it. So I
Yeah,
got
no.
like 10% into
If you
it.
have to read nonfiction about something that doesn't interest you, it's always a slog. All right.
Yeah.
Next is Roadwork. Oh wow, I know zero about this. I don't I don't even know how it's generally received because it's not talked about. I'm gonna maybe think of it in C or D. I'll go C for this one.
You are correct.
Roadwork. Ooh, okay.
C. And you know what? I was going over the list real quickly. And this is, I think, the only one that I just don't remember much about. Like, I don't like. There's a guy. He's really mad that there's this road work going on, and I remember it escalates more and more of like him getting angrier and angrier about this. But I don't remember how it resolves, like literally at all. Like, I think the last third of the book has just left my brain. Um, I didn't think it was bad. Like, I think if it was bad, I would have more things to remember about it. I
Yeah.
honestly just think it was very middling, and that's why I don't
Yeah.
remember much about
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah. All right, a forgettable one. And then we have Cujo. Have you read this recently at all? Um,
yeah.
I know the premise of this because I've seen clips of the movie. It involves the rabid Saint Bernard dog. It seems to be a really highly regarded one generally from his early career. So I'm gonna go A on this one.
Actually, a little bit lower. I'm going to put it in B.
Oh, okay.
And the reason I'm going to put it in B is I originally DNF'd it in high school. And I was like, I got like 70% into it, and I was just like, I'm just not in. And then I reread it recently because he just did a novella sequel to it in his newest short story collection. And so I was like, well, I should finish Cujo before I read this. And I reread Cujo, and I was really liking it. Like I thought it was great. And then it lost me a little around the same point, but I'm just a stronger reader now. So I was like, I'll finish. And the ending, I don't know how I feel about, so it kind of tainted it a little bit for me. But I think you get some perspectives from the dog that I really like. And while it is technically about like Cujo dealing with the rabies situation, it's also really about a marriage imploding and like trust and like how these people are growing apart. And this kid kind of gets caught in the crossfires with that. I think it's like a solid book. Like it's good. It's better than its premise lets it be, if that
Yeah.
or makes it be, I should say. But it's not one of his best, in my opinion.
All right, that sounds perfect for a B then, slightly above the like middle point. All right, Gunslinger. Ooh, I don't know what you feel about a lot of these Dark Tower books. This one is so divisive in the fantasy community. Man, where would I put it for you? I'm gonna go B on this one for you.
This one's difficult actually. I'm gonna put it. Okay, so I finished the Dark Tower now, obviously, and I'm gonna reread the Gunslinger with full knowledge, and I might bump it up on reread again. But currently, I'm gonna put it at the top of C above Carrie.
Mm-hmm.
I just find this like a mid book. Like I here's the thing. It has the best opening line that I have heard maybe ever. I think
Yeah.
when you think of what you want an opening line to be, the man in black fled across the desert and the gunslinger followed is maybe like it sets atmosphere, it sets tone, it sets conflict, it sets plot, it gives you character, it gives you like just a visual. It does so much in one sentence that I just think is phenomenal. And that's the best part of the book. And then I do think that the last chapter and there's a chapter in the middle is also pretty good. So it has like a few moments that I really like, surrounded by some stuff that I just find remarkably dull. And I've read it twice and I just haven't. But that being said, the end of the Dark Tower series does recontextualize some stuff at the beginning. So I do want to reread it again and give it another chance.
Okay. I mean, that's my expectations are also to kind of semi not be into it, but for it to be like able to appreciate it and just move beyond it in the
Yeah,
Dark
I think
Tower.
you're gonna find it kind of mid, and then like the second book of Dark Tower is where it really
Yeah.
starts to be the Dark Tower.
I think it's gonna go that way for me. All right. Oh, another one I know nothing about. Man, The Running Man. I think I've often confused Long Walk and The Running Man. I don't know what this is. Considering that I've barely hear anything about it, I think it's not one of his best works in the fandom. I'm gonna go maybe D on this one. I'm gonna go extreme D for The Running
Wow.
Man.
Well, that is not correct. I'm gonna put it in B underneath Cujo. This is one of the ones that I read a very long time ago and I have not reread yet, so my memory of it is hazy. But I really liked it. It is post-apocalyptic, basically not post-apocalyptic, dystopian, I guess it is. Where there's a TV show that where people become the Running Man, and then you have to be like found by the government or people around, or I feel like I'm getting this premise wrong. What I know ends up happening is that he's on the run from the government during this game show, and that like all of America has to like if they call in to try, so he can't be found by anybody, so he has to be like totally off the grid. But I can't remember if it starts off less convoluted than that and then becomes that. But either way, he's at a game show and
dystopian thriller premise. Okay.
Yeah, and they made a movie about it with Arnold Schwarzenegger, which was really strange miscasting. But I thought it was a really fun book. I really love the ending. Like the ending of this book is one of King's strongest.
Wow. Okay. I mean, this sounds like a premise I would be into for like a thriller palate cleanser.
It's pretty short, and unlike Firestarter, which I think is like in the similar vein, I just think it executes all of its premises much better.
Someone on the run. Hey, that sounds cool. I kind of am into that premise. I got to put that one on the King TBR. I don't think I even have that one at home.
Yeah, I haven't seen the movie. I'm just like, I remember reading the book and being like, they cast Arnold Schwarzenegger as this guy. That seems crazy.
All right, are we ready for different seasons now? Help me. This is the novella collection that includes like Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah, and then Apt People, and The Body, and Breathe Method.
Yeah, these are some of his most famous works, all combined in one. So I think this is going into S tier.
Yes, S tier. Let's see. What do we have in S tier? It'll be above The Long Walk. I'll put it below
Shining,
The Shining. Yeah, below The Shining.
below Shining. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, just excellent. Um, it is like, so it's great all the way through. Like Rita Hayworth in The Shawshank Redemption is great, but I do think the movie's better, and I saw the movie first, and that like ever so slightly makes me be like, oh wow, like the movie was a
Mm,
better experience, but still an excellent novella. The Body though is phenomenal. I think like The Body is one of his best pieces of works. I love it.
mm.
It is so good. Just like I think everybody has that like nostalgic wish of like that time you were 13 and like you were just hanging out with your friends and that was the most important thing in the world. Like
Yeah.
there's a line in the novella that always sticks with me. It's like I never had any friends like I did when I was 12. Gosh, does
Ooh,
anyone? And I'm just like,
ooh,
ooh, that's just
ooh,
like the exact feeling. Like just
ooh.
phenomenal. The breathing method is really short but good. And then Apt Pupil is surprisingly slept on. Like I feel like Apt Pupil is one of his
Oh,
better
I thought it
novellas.
was. I thought it was really engaging. I mean, I
Y-
was like gripped to
Yeah,
that thing from beginning to
I thought
end.
it was great, and I also like it was one of the later King books that I read, and I had no idea what the premise of Apt People was, and I was just like, wow, like this this is a killer. So yeah, super strong collection, and that would be my
Yeah.
go-to recommendation to somebody who has never tried Stephen King. I would give them different
Ah.
seasons, unless I knew more things about them.
Yeah, yeah, and they get a taster of different types of King stories, and yeah,
Yeah,
they're not too long. Yeah, that's a good idea as a King recommendation. All right, Pet Cemetery, one of the few I am very familiar with. I think you really like this. I think it's going into A for you.
you know this is very top heavy right now, but don't worry, we will bring it all down. But this is S tier for sure.
Oh,
Um,
okay, okay.
I will put this. Oh shit. I'll put it above The Long Walk. No, I'll put it above different where you have it right now, above different season
Yeah,
or
yeah.
above yeah,
Under the Shining.
right there.
Okay.
Yeah. This is the very last Stephen King book that I read besides the newest one that came out. Um and that's actually why it makes it more difficult for me to rank because I think Pet Cemetery is just like a great book. But I read it after reading like 20 Stephen King books of various quality and I was just very aware of like Kingisms at that time. And so I feel
Yeah.
like there was some stuff in the writing that was just irritating me because I was like sick of reading Stephen King, which isn't like a detriment to the book. But I think Pet Cemetery is so good. I think I listened to it in like 2 days. Michael C. Hall's narration was brilliant. Book's really
Yeah.
scary, but also very sad. Just an emotional
Yeah.
read and
Yeah. The
just
character
brilliant.
writing with the family from, the husband-wife relationship with the kids and the pets, like, it's really emotionally deep and nuanced and affecting and, uh,
Yeah.
yeah, very
Yeah, and also
realistic
I saw
family
the newest
dynamics.
movie first, so I'm not gonna say what happens, but I will say in the new movie, the one that came out in like 2019 or whatever, they changed a very major aspect of the story, and I didn't know that. So I went into the book thinking that a whole entire different thing was gonna happen, and that didn't happen, and that made the book more interesting and also
Mhm.
just like gut punched me more because I was expecting one thing and it veered to like in a totally different way. So
Yeah.
yeah, just excellent reading experience.
Alright, man. Love all these S tiers. We don't it doesn't it's okay if it's top heavy, like, if you truly love some of these books and some of your favorite
Yeah.
books, like,
Oh,
throw
no,
them
no, no,
more
don't
into the S
worry.
tier. Throw
This guy
more into
has a
the S tier.
50-year career. We have lots of stuff to go. Don't worry.
All right, Cycle of the Werewolf. One I've heard the least about for sure of like people even having read it. Oh man, I think this is likely going to be D for you.
Yeah, it is top of D above
Ooh.
Firestarter. Um, this is a weird book. I don't really like it's not talked about because I don't think most people have read it, and most people haven't read it because it's not worth reading. What are you gonna say?
Oh wait, I got to take a call, but you can keep talking about this. Keep talking.
Sure. So while he does that, so Cycle of the Werewolf is like 12 months of a town dealing with a werewolf, and it follows like different POV characters, and then each like month, um, more progresses with this werewolf. I think he just wanted to write like a quick pulpy werewolf thriller book, but it just I think it needed more. It's like basically a novella, and it doesn't characterize anybody well or do much with werewolf stuff, so it just feels half baked. And it's one of the maybe only Stephen King books that I would say feels really half baked because I don't really know. I don't feel like it was necessary to release in the state that it's in. Like it doesn't feel like a complete story to me. Um, so yeah, it's top of D tier. And while we wait for Ben, I will go back and read some of the comments because That's always nice. Derry says, "Tell Mrs. Kyle to read Misery. That's the intro point for anyone who thinks SK is a freak and doesn't enjoy horror." That is on a list of books that she might read. She has watched the movie and really liked it, so that helped. We also watched the Castle Rock show, and that has like, um, that character like as a younger character, so that made her more interested in her. So that could be something that she reads. Um, Jordan loved Firestarter, which is the wrong take, but that's okay. Um, let's see. Jordan doesn't like the Gunslinger. Yeah, I know you got to continue on anyway, Jordan. Oh yeah, Derry says convicted felons released into an almost dungeon situation with glorified hunters and killers. That's the premise of The Running Man. So yeah, it's like a dystopian reality show um, vibe. Let's see. Hello, Evie. How are we doing here? You don't have to bring things down. You've liked some Stephen King books. You're all good. Um, the rankings will balance out when SK's drugs kick in. Perhaps they will, Derry. Perhaps they will. Um, I agree with Derry here, where she says Stephen King works better with non-traditional horror. If he can work with the inner fears of his own characters, he's amazing. Yeah, I agree, and I think that's why like written horror is so much different to me than watching horror, because the way Stephen King like deals with like yeah like I always think of The Mist, which is a really good example of this, where all these people come into the store and they're waiting, or they're hiding from the mist where there's all these monsters outside, and then of course the real monsters are the people in there, that because they start being so afraid that they start acting crazy. um and it's a little on the nose, but it's on the nose in a really well done way, where it's like the monsters aren't out there, the monsters are in here. And I just think that's such a like tent pole of Stephen King's horror, which is that like the human monsters are always just so much worse than what we could imagine like some sort of like werewolf or vampire could be. And yeah, he's just a great writer sometimes. um Monica says the narrator for The Stand is probably my top 2 3 fave audiobook narrator. I thought he was really good. I wouldn't say he's one of my favorites, but I did really like it. I forget who did it off the top of my head. um Evie says Misery was my first Stephen King as an adult, and I appreciated it, but I still hated it. Hated the character perspective. That's fair. Like you hated the character, or you hated like seeing the book through his lens, or what exactly do you mean with that? Oh yeah, George Goodall is a great narrator. I do really like him. Evie says The Green Mile is Chef's Kiss, and I super agree with that. Um, I'm not going to try and hide that I love The Green Mile because that book is awesome. Let's see here. Um, it's funny, Lucas, that you say that, because Grover Gardner and Lucas Goodall, I mix up all the time. I think they sound so similar, and they have the same like era of time in which they did books. So there's always like crossover there. What is the next book on here? I can't even read these. Like they're so small to me. I don't know what the next book is, so I can't even start talking about the next book. So I'll just tell you guys what I'm reading right now while I wait for King, or wait for Ben to get off the phone. I am currently reading Under the Dome again, which is related to this. It's been a while since I've reread Under the Dome, and it's a book that I like. So, oh, Christine is next. Yes, Christine, of course. I can see that now that I see that. So yeah, I'm reading Under the Dome. I also started a book for my book club in real life. It's The Sweetness of Water by Nathan Harris. I started a book club at work, and there was a lot of interest, which I'm really excited about. And we're each taking a turn choosing a book, and I chose The Sweetness of Water. So those are the 2 books I'm mainly reading right now, and I'm still trying to finish Wise Man's Fear by Patrick Rothfuss. And that book will eventually be finished. Derry says it doesn't help that Stephen King books are read by so many different narrators. That's true. Evie says, I understood what King was going for with the author character, but I still hated how he talked about women, even though Annie is certifiably insane. I mean, that's fair. Like, Stephen King says a lot of gross stuff sometimes. So that is totally valid. Um, If Talisman is above rage tier, Kev is going to riot. Well, he might riot because everything. Oh, we see a Benjamin here. A wild Benjamin has appeared. And Evie, just to say real quick, I'm reading more than those books. It's exhausting to tell. It's actually super, like, when people in my life are like, "What are you reading right now?" I always panic, and I'm like, "Oh no, what book do I tell them about?" Because I can't tell them all seven. So I'm always reading. I'm actually about to finish Prey by Michael Crichton. That's another book.
Oh, that's hilarious. About not being able to know what to tell them.
Yeah. You all good?
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Christine, man, I sometimes get confused about the Stephen King books that get like very poor reception in the Stephen King fandom. I think this is one that's usually towards the bottom of lists. I might go for a C for this one for you.
I'm gonna put it bottom of A.
Oh, okay. We like Christine. All right. All right.
Christine is a banger. That is a really good book. I think people. So Christine is the disparity between people who haven't read it talking about it and the people who have read it talking about it is like very different. Because
Mm.
Christine is the number one most memed upon Stephen King book
Ah.
because it's about a haunted car, and so people will be like, "Oh, like he just writes about haunted cars." And it sounds like the silliest premise. Uh, and I thought I was gonna not like it very much. And honestly, it's just a really good book. Like it is about a haunted car, but it's not. It's treated seriously, but also like winked at as being ridiculous because it's this car is um like possessed, for want of a better word, and it by a malevolent spirit, and that spirit is infecting its owner. So there's this teenager who gets this car and he gets more and more obsessed with it. And the story is told from the perspective of his friends mostly that start realizing that he's dealing with this situation and getting weirder and weirder and how they're going to like they start being like something's not right here. And just the character interactions and the way they deal with this main character like slowly descending into depravity and craziness and like just being manipulated more by the spirit is really good. And it also has one of King's stronger endings. I really liked the ending, and the I guess like reveals of what's going on and
Oh, cool.
why I thought was really good. So just like a really strong book. The movie's also really good. It has like 80s campiness feel that I really liked.
Oh, cool. Bonus if the movie's good. All right. Christine's on the TBR for King for sure. Love it. The Talisman. Ooh, I've a lot of my perceptions of these comes from watching Mike's book reviews, Stephen King reviews over the years, and I know this one was mixed for him. Stephen King wrote this as a co-author with Peter Straub, right?
Yes.
And I think Mike was like, "Oh, I really like the King parts, but not the Straub parts that he was perceiving." I don't know. I don't think this one gets too much love. I'm gonna go B on this one for you.
Um, I'll do C underneath the gunslinger.
Okay, okay. See.
Uh, or sorry, I misread. It's above roadwork, is what I should say.
Okay, undercarry. Got it.
Yeah, under carry. Yeah. So this book is a mess, but I think it's overhated. Like Kev was in here saying that it deserves rage tier. Some people I know really hate it, and I was expecting to like super hate it. Uh, it's not great. Like there's a good story in there somewhere, but it is really overlong, and just so many parts of it are dull, and there's some like cringy parts. The premise is this like kid, his mom is stolen by some people, I guess. And this kid goes to this like other world to try to save her, and he meets all these like scallywag individuals that are helping him on his quest. It's kind of like a classic Portal fantasy in that vein, but it's way too long, and there's just a bunch of it that I just did not like at all. But the core story is fine, and I ended up liking the main character and like the journey that he goes on.
Mhm.
Somewhere in Ohio, Kev is a plop epilept. I can't say this word, but Kevin's upset. And you're right, Tanner. He is. He just suffered a stroke. But yeah, it's fine. Not something that I would ever revisit, but I don't
Yeah,
get why it's
yeah.
so hated.
All right, down in C for the Talisman. Eyes of the Dragon. Ooh, like a young adult high fantasy book. This one I see people generally like, but it's like a little oddity too for his career. I'm gonna go B for you.
No, this is a C tier for sure, fam.
Oh, see,
Underneath
okay.
Carrie, but above, but
Yeah.
above the Talisman. So Eyes of the Dragon. I think I just read it when I was too old, and I know like I mean I
Mm,
read YA and stuff sometimes too, so it's not like this particular story just hit me where I was like, oh, it just feels a little silly to me for what it is. But I know plenty of adults that read it for the first time and really liked it, so don't take that as anything. But it just I feel like a lot of people read it because it has Dark Tower connections, and like it literally does. Like there's characters from the Dark Tower in it. Um, but I just like don't think that it's an interesting story to me. Like I don't have criticisms for it the way I do some King books that I like less. I just find it kind of fine. Um,
yeah.
and I'm glad that it like so the reason he wrote it is because he wanted a story that his daughter could read because all of his books were too inappropriate for his like young kids, and so he wrote it so that they could read it. And I like that, and I'm glad that there's like a different avenue for people to get into Stephen King that's less, like horrific and shit, but just kind of a fine book to me.
Okay. Yeah, and I don't feel a great pull to read that soon, but
Also, the
I'm
audiobook,
completing King.
the audiobook for it, I know a lot of people like. So this is just like a me
Oh,
thing,
okay. Yeah.
but I really, really hated the way the
Oh,
audiobook did the voice for the main villain. Like I did not like it at all. So
okay. Yeah, that always hurts if you don't like voice from narrator. All right, Thinner. I have seen the movie. Back when I was in high school, I randomly just saw this on TV. It was creepy. It creeped me out. I liked the movie. It was scary. I have no clue how the book is generally received, though. I don't hear too much about it. It's probably a shorter one, right? Like, I'm gonna
yeah,
go
it's
B
shorter.
on this one.
It's also one of the Bachman books, I think.
Oh, okay.
Oh, where to put this? Let's see. Uh, I would put this over. No, yeah, maybe over Roadwork
Oh,
and
and
C
C.
tier.
Okay.
Um, I really hate the premise of this book and most of the execution and most of the characters. So like it should be lower, but it's like very readable. Like that's the
Yeah,
reason
yeah,
it's not quite in D tier. Where it's like it's funny because for a while I was really hating on this book, and Tall Guy Reads was like, Kyle, you really hate Thinner. I'm like, I don't really hate Thinner. It's just not good. And I was like it's just I think and I know sensibilities change, but just like the idea of this, like, he crosses this gypsy woman that's just like thinner, and it's like so, like, even just like it's so stereotypical and like rude to an entire
hmm
culture of person. And then, like, it's also just like kind of rude towards fat people. And I just like, I don't know. It just gave me the ick. Sometimes books just give you the ick, and I'm just not a
yeah,
fan of it
yeah,
really.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I did read it fast because it is like he's on a time crunch because he's getting really thin, and eventually, if you get too thin, you die. So you have to figure out what's going on. But just just not a good. It's just not for me.
Yeah, yeah. All right, that sounds like one I can skip, especially because I have seen the movie. I get the picture for that one. Oh, some heavy hitters. Oh no, sorry. I thought we were on it, but we're on something that looks like it. Skeleton
Skeleton
Crew.
Crew.
Wow, is this a short fiction collection?
Yeah, short story collection.
Oh man, I've never heard anything about this. I'm gonna go, but you like his short stories? I'm gonna go B. This one.
So here's the thing. When I did my top 10 Stephen King books, like it was like my third video, I put Skeleton Crew on it as an honorable
Oh
mention
wow.
because I was like, yeah, like I haven't reread this, but it had some of my favorite short stories of all time. And then I reread it, and that changed my perception of it a little bit. And it's really difficult to rank. This is one of the most difficult to rank on here because it has three of my favorite short stories of all time in it.
Oh.
Like,
Oh.
like
Wow.
The Raft, The Jaunt, and Survivor Type are excellent, excellent short stories. When I went into reading the book, those were the main three that I remembered from when I was like 15, and I remembered them very well. Like The Jaunt is incredible, just horrific. Survivor Type is this guy that's marooned on an island after a plane crash with just like a kilo of heroin, and he's a doctor, and he's trying to do anything he can to survive. So he starts taking heroin to like get himself through it, and it's just phenomenal. The Jaunt is like a sci-fi short story about people that can like move themselves quickly through time, through space and time. And the Raft is about a bunch of teenagers on this raft that are being attacked by this like sludge demon that's coming underneath the raft and trying to just suck them through the raft. Just incredible stories. And the reason I'm only
Wow. I
talking
gotta
about those three
check those out.
stories is because most of the rest of this collection is just fine. Like there's a couple
Oh.
good ones, but those
Yeah.
ones are just so good. So it's really difficult. I'm gonna put it at the top of B
Yeah.
because it's just such an
Mix.
uneven
Yeah.
experience for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, I gotta check those stories out though. Those few that you really love. Those sound cool.
Yeah, they're great.
All right. It's one of his big chunky boys, often on people's top lists of favorite King. I think I know that you're not the biggest fan of the ending, but still probably a lot to love here. I'm gonna go A for this one.
Yeah, I would put it top of A.
Mm, got it.
I really don't like the ending of this book, and like a lot of people dislike the scene that everybody dislikes, and I dislike that scene and everything else around it. Like I would, if I was Stephen King's editor or like agent, I would be like, just take the last 40 pages of this book and rewrite them. Like I don't like anything about it. And I am in the vast minority of that. Like most people who say they don't like the ending of it, they don't like the aspect that everybody talks about, and I just like don't like the whole ending, like wholesale,
Yeah.
all of it. Don't like,
Yeah.
which is really unfortunate because other than that, it is a phenomenal book.
Mm,
I think it is the most quintessential Stephen King book in the fact that it has all of his strengths and his weaknesses. Um,
mm,
the like intermingling of the flashbacks and the like adult stories is so well done. The human characters that you hate. The book is terrifying. I love the Losers Club with all my heart. Just such a good book and so horrifying and messed up. And
ooh,
Pennywise is such a good villain as this like personification of evil. And if it just wasn't for that last little bit, it would be one of my
yikes.
favorite books of all time. But it
Well, that's
really
a
it
shame.
really sours me on that the ending. So
Oh, that's a shame. Man. Oh well. But it still sounds like I gotta read that because
yeah, I
this
highly
is gonna be
recommend anybody read it.
a
Most
lot to
people don't
love.
have the issue with the ending that I do. Like it is
Oh,
a
okay.
very
Okay.
specific me thing that I don't like. And then some like people don't like this the big scene because it's gross and but like that's
Yeah.
just one scene. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. All right. Well, that's it. Top of A, and now we're into an interesting one. Drawing of the Three. People tend to really love like books 2, 3, and 4 of Dark Tower. I'm gonna go for this one. Maybe A. A. We gotta scroll up. I'm gonna say A for Drawing of the Three.
Um, I'm gonna put this at bottom of S.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I
Love it.
really love the drawing of the three. I think that book is just crazy good. It is incredibly readable. I think it's like one of his most fast paced books that like stays good. Like he has fast paced books that are fat. Like I mean, Thinner is an example where Thinner is like fast paced and you're just moving, but it's not very good. Whereas I just think Drawing of the Three like starts crazy and then gets crazier. And I can actually because it's like so different from the first book, I can tell you the original premise of this book, which is that Roland wakes up on a beach and he doesn't know where he is or why he's there. And there's these giant lobster monsters on the beach that are trying to eat him. And he has to run away from them. And he keeps finding portals to go other places to get away from them, but it keeps dragging him back to the beach. So he has to figure out why he's on this beach and deal with the lobstrosities, as he calls them. And it's just I don't know, it's
Whoa.
just a great book. It just really opened up the Dark Tower for me. You get to meet like the main characters of the series. I do think
Hmm.
there's like a really problematic part of the book that I would have wished he didn't write or write differently, but I do think it gets resolved in a way that is passable. But King has just never been the greatest on race, and I think this is maybe his worst book on race.
Oh,
Uh, but I choose to believe he was trying to be progressive, especially with like I know that he is generally progressive, and I just think kind of reads icky. But rest of the book is just a banger.
interesting. Okay, man, I gotta get into the Dark Tower. All right, Misery. Ooh, another one that's all over people's top lists for King. I saw the movie when I was young. It freaked me out. Kathy Bates is amazing. I think this is gonna go into A tier for you.
I will put this in S too. I got to really stop
Oh,
with the S's, but I
love
feel
it.
what I feel.
Oh, let's do it.
I
Let's
will
do
put
it.
this. I will put this above Drawing of the Three.
Nice.
Um, yeah, Misery's great. I also agree. Like, it's a great first book. For somebody to get into Stephen King. It's horrific in all the right ways. Annie Wilkes is terrifying, but like not over the top, like violent. Just like a really good psychological thriller book that or psychological horror
Yeah.
book. I mean, that just hits all the right notes of like cabin fever and just like mounting dread. And yeah, just great.
Oh, gotta read that. Gotta read that. All right. Next is the Tommy Knockers. I hear a lot about this one, and it's never good. It's never good. He like Mike talks about how Stephen King wrote this in a weird place in his life, like very high most of the time, and writing some absolutely crazy stuff. I think this is going the top of the rage tier for you.
You are bang on correct, my friend. This is the only time so far. Well, I guess you got Rage right too. Tommy Knockers sucks as a bad book. Um, it it is just like I. So here's the thing: Rage is a worse book. But Tommy Knockers like is A, very long, and B, is just horrible to sludge through. Like at least Rage reads fast for all of its faults. The Tommy Knockers is the weirdest, dumbest, just a and actually, I will say to defend it a little bit, the beginning is like decent. Like the beginning starts interesting, and I got lulled into a false sense of security that I was gonna maybe actually find it okay, and it just gets wild. It's like there's like this um there's like this ghost burial site essentially of like aliens, and it like infects the town people. So it like there's like a radioactive essentially like alien ghost presence, and if it touches someone, it like turns them into some sort of like blob that's like an alien blob, and it's just a weird fucking book, man. I've never felt more like, oh, this man was on drugs than I did with this one.
Well, I appreciate hearing other people talk about it because it's fun to hear. I do not want to read this one myself.
I will
I'm
say
gonna
Mark
pass on that one.
Lawrence liked this book, and Mark Lawrence has bad taste. Like, I'm so sorry, Mark, buddy. You write good books, but absolutely not. Like, you should be banned from the internet for liking this. This is just
Oh,
straight up lunacy.
oh man, love it. All right, now the dark half. I what is the set of books that's like connected? It's like the regulators, and that's not
Uh,
this, right?
no,
Like
no, that's the
no.
regulators, and oh, we'll get there. I will
Okay, but it's
regulators
the
and
dark
something
half.
else.
Man, I don't know what this is about. I don't hear too much about it. I'm gonna go B on this one for you.
Um, that's close. Um, yeah, we can put it at the bottom of B. So the premise of Dark Half is so Richard Bachman was his pseudonym, and people figured out that he had a pseudonym because he's just really bad at not being Stephen King. Like you know that like Stephen King's entire career when he was writing Richard Bachman was that like meme from Parks and Rec where John Ralphie is like, "Don't be suspicious, don't be suspicious." That's like he's so clearly Stephen King all the time, and so people were like, "Hey, are you Richard Bachman? Because you kind of you guys are the exact same." And he was like, "Damn it all to hell! I guess I have to kill off Richard Bachman." So he kills Richard Bachman. Like he does like a fake obituary and stuff for the alter ego and everything. And then he wrote a book about it, which is essentially just like what if Richard Bachman was real. So the dark half is this fake writer that's clearly Stephen King who's been writing under an alias for a long time, and he has to retire the alias. And then he realizes that the alias has been willed into existence, and so the alias is trying to take over his life, and it's like a darker version of him, and it's trying to steal his life because he's like, I am you, but the darker version of you. And so he starts committing all these crimes and shit to try and like frame the original guy. And it's like a fun book. I do think it's a little heavy-handed,
Hmm.
and it's a little bit long for maybe what the premise dictated. But I had a fun time with it. I thought it was a good, solid, enjoyable
Okay,
book.
okay. That should go on this King TBR for me. All right, this is 4 Past Midnight. That's like a 4 novella collection again, sort of thing.
Yeah, this one's rough. I
Uh,
gotta I gotta see what's in it. It's been a long time. Let me see real quick. You can
I
tell me what you think, and then I'll look
I
it
do
up.
not hear much about this. The only novella collection I actually hear much about is Different Seasons. So I think this one's gonna go. Now hearing you are forgetting about it. I'm gonna put it in C.
Oh, okay. No, no, no. So, like, yeah, he just has a lot of short story collections. So this is 4 novellas. It is the Langlois. I can't say that word. Uh, Secret Window, Secret Garden, The Library Police, and The Sundog. So the Langoliers has a miniseries, and Secret Window, Secret Garden is a movie with Johnny Depp. And then I don't think the other two have adaptations,
Mm.
but actually these were all like pretty good. Like I
Oh,
like
okay.
the Library Policeman quite a bit. The Langoliers was fantastic. Secret Window, Secret Garden is good, and the Sundog is also good. So I'm gonna put this maybe top of B above Skeleton Crew.
Mhm.
It it could be bottom of A when we get done, but that feels right to me. It's top
Mhm.
of B. Just like solid book. Like none of them are some
Yeah.
of his best, but there's none of them. It's just like very solid and dependable, and they're like pretty different from each other. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, good collection
All right. Solid. Yeah, I've definitely heard of some of those names, and not. I just hadn't been familiar with the Four Past Midnight
for sure.
title.
Yeah,
All right, Needful Things. This one is a divisive one in the readership, I believe. I know this premise a little bit. Like, there's a shopkeeper that sets up and provides something that someone needs, and the premise sounds cool. I'm gonna go A for this one.
not even close. Let's see. What do we got in D tier right now?
Werewolf
I
and Firestarter.
I think it's above. Or what's the third one there? Oh, Dance Macabre. Okay, yeah, it's better than that. I would put it below Firestarter.
Oh boy,
No,
this is
no,
low. Okay,
above Firestarter. Let's be reasonable here.
okay,
Above
it's
Firestarter.
low. That's low.
Yeah. So this is my biggest Stephen King hot take. Pretty much all Stephen King fans like this book a lot. It's in a lot of people's favorites. I honestly think I was in a bad reading space when I read it. Not because like I can't even pinpoint what I was doing, but it's I go so far against the grain with people when they talk about this one that I'm like, it might be a problem with how I was reading it. Like I maybe read it wrong, but I didn't like it at all. It the town building was really good, and that's like I should rate it higher for the town building because it's one of King's strengths, and I do love the way he writes towns. And that alone should get it higher, but it's just 900 pages, and it's so. This is my perception, and everybody that I've talked to about this book disagrees with me with this. So take this with a grain of salt. But my perception of that book is like every single character gets super greedy about something highly specific, and they start making ridiculous decisions based on it. Like they'll be like, "Oh, I really need like a mint limited edition classic, like semi-pro automatic, like wristwatch slash dustpan slash reading nook slash vacuum, and I can't live without it, and I'll kill my neighbor for it." Like I'm exaggerating, but it felt like that for like 900 pages. Like it was just like, man, I remember there was this kid that just like starts doing crazy shit because he wants this like mint limited edition baseball card, and there's always too many. There's too many words before each thing. It's always like he needed a classic mint limited edition original. Like just shut the fuck up. Like I get it, people are greedy, and it just felt like Stephen King was telling me over and over again, hey, people, they don't like
Oh,
other people. You know what they like? Things. People
oh
like
man.
things. And I'm just like, dude, shut the fuck up, Stephen King. And it just drove me nuts. And I read it like I didn't talk to anybody else while I was reading it, and then afterwards everybody's like, yeah, I love Needful Things, and I'm like, I don't get it. So
Oh,
I will
love
reread
that.
this one because
Yeah,
I actually think it might have been like I was low on iron that week or something, but I just
yeah,
didn't
yeah,
like it at
yeah.
all.
Okay, and the villain I hear gets talked about in that one. The shopkeeper, is that a compelling
Yeah, I mean,
character?
yeah, like
Yeah.
theoretically, I also think like I don't like the way the book ends. Like I think the last like
Mm.
30% of it just kind of gets really silly. The human villain in it is a character that he's had in other. I think he's actually in The Body. I feel like this is where the character
Ooh,
originates. He's in a couple Stephen King stories, and like you can
ooh,
see him, like in The Body, he's a kid, and then
love that. Yeah.
in Needful Things, he's an adult, and so you see him get worse and worse, which is like a cool concept. But I thought he was like cartoonishly evil in this book.
Mm, mm.
Um, and then the like Leland Gaunt stuff is starts interesting, but it just feels like he was trying to do Salem's Lot, but like less. He was like, "What if everybody
Yeah.
just randomly was evil?" I don't know. I didn't.
Derry
What
has
didn't feel.
a counterpoint to you on the item, the specificity of the items.
Yeah, Darius says, I really like Needful Things because it's those specific items being available that makes people lose their minds. I understand, but like if it was just 30% less, like if he was just like, yo, like a mint classic, you know, cabinet with yeah, oh my god, like just shut up, man. Like I get it.
All right. So Needful Things is a bust.
There's so many books left. Holy fuck.
Yeah. Oh, we'll go. Let's do a little speedier. All
Yeah,
right.
okay, let's go faster.
Wastelands. This one only I
Um,
see getting lots of love. I'm gonna go A for this one.
yeah, let's do like top of A, maybe below the dead zone. Yeah, below the dead zone sounds right to me. I'm
All
gonna
right.
stop explaining so much just so we can get through. But like Wastelands, really good book. Ending is nuts. Just like Roland and the
Nice.
quartet finally together and just kicking ass. I think the most like straightforward Dark Tower book, and it's a blast.
Oh, nice. That sounds great. Ooh, Gerald's game involves some like BDSM premise. I don't know. I don't hear too much about this either way. I'll go B on this one.
Not even fucking close, Ben. I'll put that in rage tier. Put it above Tommy Knockers, but it's
Oh
still not good.
wow.
Yeah. I fucking hate that book. I've read it. I tried reading it twice. I've actually DNF'd it around halfway. I don't like it at all. But the way that I don't like it is actually very specific in just that I feel like the way the main character thinks about certain topics is just really gross to me. The character is like sitting there, like, tied, like handcuffed, and she's trying to like deal with, you know, sitting there isolated. And so she constructs this character in her mind to like remind her of her trauma. Like she's talking to like a fictionalized version of her friend. And the way that friend talks to her is just really gross. The book deals with a lot of really heavy subjects in a way that I don't think it does well. And I know that I didn't finish the book, so maybe it does, but I just kept being so grossed out about it. I will say though, the movie is excellent. The movie has a scene in it that terrifies me to this day, so I highly recommend the movie. Just hated the book.
Oh wow. Okay. That's a no-go. What about Dolores Claiborne? Man, I think I mixed Gerald's game and Dolores Claiborne up. I have no clue what this one is like. I'm gonna go B on this one. No clue the
So
premise, nothing.
Dolores Claiborne and Gerald's Game are companion novels in a way, in the sense that they take place on the same night and they were released back to back.
Ah.
And they're like, there's an eclipse in both books, and that's how you can tell they take place on the
Oh,
same night.
okay.
Dolores Claiborne is good. It does like stream of consciousness, which I hate, which really affected my reading of it. But I think the story and the character voice is really great. I think if it just was less stream of, like, it's one chapter, the whole book is one chapter, and it's just this woman just like explaining this crime and her reason for doing it, and it just was a lot to deal with in that way. I'm gonna put
No.
it top of C. Um, I think just like all the same words, or like most of the same words, but packaged slightly different, would have worked a lot better for me.
Yeah.
But it was just very
Yeah.
exhausting
Oh,
for me to
interesting.
read.
Okay. So not a big fan of that like whole duology set. Okay.
Yeah,
God, I didn't realize they were actual companion novels. All right.
yeah. Like there's
Nightmares.
no like.
Yeah.
It's just the fact that they take place on the same night
Yeah.
is the only. Yeah.
Nightmares and Dreamscapes. Is this novellas or short stories?
Short stories. Let me look up the list real quick because I'm not gonna
All right.
remember. Nightmare at Dreamsday.
The other short stories are in B. I'm gonna go B on this one.
Let me just quickly look here. This is one I read first year after high school, I believe. Wow, this was published the year I was born. That's crazy. I'm so old. Oh, okay, Dolan's Cadillac, Chattery Teeth, Sneakers. Ooh, they've got a hell of a band. Oh, this one's pretty good. You know, Stephen King, say one thing for him. Say that he makes really memorable stories because It Grows
Mm.
on You, The End of the Whole Mess, The
Wow.
Night Flyer, Popsy. Oh, Popsy's terrifying. Okay, you know what? I remember a lot of these.
Wow.
This is a good
Wow.
short story collection. I'm gonna put this above Christine in A.
Wow. Okay. Solid.
Yeah,
Love it.
just again, like a lot of these I read a long time ago, but if I can remember that many of the short stories
Yeah.
vividly, it had to have been
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
good. So
All right. So
Stephen King writes
he's
very good
crushing it.
short stories.
He's crushing it on short stories for you for sure.
Yeah.
Ooh, Insomnia. I have this one in hardcover. I got from a used bookstore. This one I feel like is divisive in the readership, and I'm not sure where you're gonna fall on it. I'm gonna go B on this one.
I will put it in A above Christine.
Oh, okay, like it.
Yeah, Insomnia is really good. I like that it was an older protagonist. The situation that they're all put into with like he can't sleep, and there's like so he starts noticing all these like um different things going on. There's like a weird man that's impacting the town and doing some weird things that he can now see because he's not been sleeping. Very Dark Tower connected. I think reading it at the point that I did impacted my enjoyment because it is so Dark Tower related that like it's
Ooh.
almost a companion novel to Dark Tower in a way. Like I know lots of people have read it without it being, but like I would say that the best time to read this is before the last Dark Tower book. Like
Oh,
that's the
okay.
best time to read it. But yeah, very good book. Enjoyable. I will say one of the worst audiobooks I've ever listened to.
Ooh.
It has these like jarring noise effects in it that I wanted to like take a screwdriver and stab myself in the ear when so like a
Oh,
chapter will
no.
end, so there'll be like a guy talking and he'll be like, oh my god, we got to get to the thing or else everybody will die, and then there'll be like the sound that's like oh!
Oh
But
no.
super
Oh
super
no.
loud
Oh no.
for a long time, and I was like, why
Oh
would you
god.
do this to me? So
Yeah, that's no good. That's no good. All right, but that one that's gonna be on the TBR if I'm really into the Dark Tower. Want to
yeah,
fit that in
it
before book
I would
7. All
say
right.
it's that and
Yeah.
Salem's Lot are the two books I would highly recommend
Yeah.
while reading the Dark Tower.
All right, another one that I almost hear zero about any which way. Rose Matter. Because I just don't hear about it, I'm gonna say C.
Yeah, this is C tier. Let's see. I would say maybe right above Cujo.
Where's Cujo?
Rose Matter. You know what? It's above Gunslinger actually. Like I would put it
Oh,
right below Dolores Claiborne. Yeah, right there. Rose Matter is about this woman who is in an abusive relationship and she runs away from him. And then it follows first her fleeing this domestic abuse relationship, and then also this guy, like you start getting perspectives from him trying to track her down. And my problem is now again, this is one of the ones that I read when I was trying to finish up his books. So I was getting a little sick of like a very specific Kingism, which is he writes really good human antagonists, and then he writes the same type of human antagonist poorly all the time. And sometimes they can be the exact same like character type, and it'll just work in one and not work in the other. And I think he goes to the well too often, which is just like a guy that gets unhinged for no reason. And the guy is always unhinged for a very specific slight. And then it just like he just gets more and more crazy, and then like he's just like not acting like how a human would act in any situation, and he's just like comically evil, and every thought he has is evil. And if he sees a black person, you know what word he's going to call him because now
oh
he's
god.
evil. Earlier in the book he was just like kind of not a good guy, but now he sees a black person and you know what he's gonna think some things, and he sees a woman and you know what he's gonna call that woman some things. And I'm like, you know what, we could just like, I get it, man, like if we could just dial back this, I would still get this guy sucks. So
Yeah.
all the stuff with Rose Matter, with Rose is really good, and I hate the villain perspective a lot.
Oh boy.
And then I
That
also
yeah.
think the last third of the book gets super weird, so it was just kind of strange. So very
Yes.
uneven experience.
This sounds like a pitfall of someone writing a lot of standalones and like recycling character types. But yeah, I'm not the
For
biggest fan
sure,
of
yeah,
getting the like unhinged evil characters POVs. Those are often uninteresting to actually be with in their mind. So that makes sense.
yeah, yeah. No, totally.
All right. Ooh, what is this? The regulators. The
Oh, that's
regulators.
the one with uh,
Okay, I do not know much about this. Is this a co-written book or no? Not a co-written book.
no.
I don't know. No, not a co-written.
I
I'm gonna
had to.
say
Is this by
C.
Stephen King or Richard Bachman? I always get these mixed up. The Regulators is by Stephen King. Or no, The Regulators is by Richard Bachman, and it was released the same time as Desperation, which was by Stephen King. Okay, so that's how I remember which one's which because they're
Okay.
similar and they have the same characters and stuff. The Richard Bachman one I liked more than the Stephen King
Okay.
one. I think. So. I'm gonna put that top
B.
of C.
Oh, top of
Yeah, I
C.
would say
Okay.
top of C. Yeah.
Nothing to write home about.
Yeah, like it's good. The premise is interesting, which is that there's this like malevolent force thing that um takes over this young kid, and then the mom is dealing with it. And it starts getting influenced by this thing. It's kind of similar to Christine, actually, now I'm thinking about it, but very, very different execution, but like very high level
Hmm.
premise. But yeah, I don't remember a ton about it because I wasn't super memorable.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And
not
then
bad.
Desperation is like covering the same time and events. Uh. Huh.
No, no, no. Desperation is a
Oh.
so
Oh.
the Desperation was released on the same day as The Regulators, and the premise, it was the last like Richard Bachman-y thing he did, which
Oh,
was it's a story if Stephen King wrote the story, and it's a story if Richard Bachman wrote the story, because they're different people. Uh, and the Stephen King one, Desperation,
huh.
I don't like. Desperation, I think, is a stronger premise. But it has a lot more Stephen King weakness, which is just like repetitively evil
Mm.
villains being evil. Um, now that I think about it, I do think I like it more than Regulators. So you can put it directly above Regulators
Oh,
because
okay, okay. Yeah.
I think the premise is stronger, and I remember more from this book, which maybe makes me think that I liked it a little bit more. Um, which is just that like
Yeah.
there's this town called Desperation, and people keep going to this town, and there's this sheriff that's like trying to like he convinces them all that they have to come with him, and they think something's wrong with this sheriff, and they start realizing what's going on in this town. But it felt very repetitive to me, and just kind of like the way it was told was very like vignette style. Like you'd get one person's story and it would go back,
Mm.
and then it would be back in the middle of the story. Like it was a little hectic and crazy, which
Yeah.
a Stephen King type
I,
thing.
I do like the idea that he released a book on the same day with under his name, under pseudonym. Like that's a cool
Yeah, a super
thing. That
cool
yeah.
concept. I also love the two covers. The two covers tell a story to get like it's one
Oh,
picture together, which is nice.
oh, cool, cool. All right, this one is The Green Mile. I know you love this. I feel like this is going at the top of S tier currently. Is where I think it's going. The Green
Um,
Mile.
well, it's not that high. Relax. I would put it. A, ooh, I don't know. It's really tough. I also have like a lot of strong feelings about the movie, which impacts
Hmm.
my. I would put it above Pet Cemetery, where you have it right now.
Okay.
Green Mile is excellent. Everybody should read it. Um, movie's fantastic. There's nothing else to say except
Yeah.
extremely moving book that is one of it's his best writing, I would say for
Oh
sure,
wow.
and
Oh
then one of
nice.
his best stories for sure.
I mean, the movie was gutting emotionally. I feel like I just don't even have the emotional bandwidth to read this thing. And I saw the movie
I
many
bel
years ago. It
I
really
believe
left
in
a
you,
big
Ben.
mark. It
I
left a
believe in
huge
you, Ben.
mark. The
You can do
movie.
it.
Michael Clark Duncan, Tom Hanks, really
Fantastic, yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
Such a good movie.
All right, this is Wizard and Glass. I think this is the flashback Dark Tower book. People seem to like it. I'm gonna go A tier for Wizard and Glass.
It's funny because my review of this book on Goodreads is like it reads pretty negative, and sometimes somebody will comment on it, and I'll realize how negative the book like the review sounds, and I'm like, oh yeah, I guess this sounds like I didn't like this book. I chose that time to complain about a
Mm,
lot of things that bother me about Dark
yeah.
Tower. But it is a really good book. I would say it's my second favorite Dark Tower book, but it has a
Oh
lot of
wow.
shit that pisses me off with like some of the way sex is dealt with, and it's just kind of gross and creepy. Um, but the core story is really good. I would put it directly above Wastelands.
Nice. All right. Solid for the Dark Tower. Bag of Bones. Oh, do not hear about this one very much. Is this like one of the first like mystery ones? I don't know.
No.
I'm gonna go B for this one.
So Bag of Bones is about this guy whose wife dies, and he realizes that she was lying to him about some stuff. So he goes back to this town where he was a novelist, and he goes back to this town because he's been unable to write since his wife's death, and they used to like vacation in this town, and he goes there, and there's a spirit that's haunting the cabin that they stay in, and he starts unraveling both the mystery of this spirit and some of the things that his wife was keeping from him, and brings it all together. And there's this woman there that is in a custody battle with the dad of the grandpa of the kid, who's like a rich, powerful man in town and wants the kid away from her. Um, I was described this book as the best. Like it has all of the best and worst King stuff.
Ooh.
It has some of his best like writing and like just character stuff. It has really interesting premises, and then it does a bunch of really weird stuff. There's a scene in it that I hate, and I think is really not something that should have been included or included differently. It just feels like voyeuristic in a way that it didn't sit right with me. The age gap between the two main characters is super weird and uncomfortable. But the examination of grief is also like really well done. And there's a scene in like maybe the second or third chapter that like almost brought tears to my eyes. It was so well done. Um, so it's a mixed experience. I'm going to
Mhm.
put it at the top of B. because I came out more positive than negative.
Yeah. All right. Interesting. That sounds worthwhile at the very least. All right. The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon. I hear very little about this. I'm gonna go bottom B on this one.
I will do C somewhere. Let's see.
Ah.
I will put it above Dolores Claiborne,
All
which is the
right.
third one. Yeah. So right to the left there. Yeah. The Girl Who Loves Tom Gordon is a very simple premise. That is a little bit too long. Like ironically, like it's released as a book. I think it should have been cut like 30 pages and been like a novella, would have been
Mhm.
stronger.
Ah.
But the central premise is great. It's this girl that gets lost in the woods. She's following her mom, and her mom's busy with her own stuff, and she doesn't notice that the girl has walked off the path. And there's like tons. It's like a huge woods in the New England, and so she's just lost, and she has to find her way. And Tom Gordon is her favorite baseball player, so she like thinks of inspirational things that he says to try and get through it. And she feels like there's maybe something following her in the woods.
Oh.
Really
Okay.
good premise. I really liked like the girl. I have no real problems with it except that I just felt like, I mean, most of the
Y-
book is literally her walking through the forest. So
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
just felt like it needed to be tightened up.
Yeah.
Really loved the ending. The last 2 pages of this book,
Wow.
or last
Okay.
3 pages, I loved. Fantastic. So I recommend it as like a short
Yeah.
read.
Okay. Sounds worthwhile, at least, but not a home run for you.
Right.
Hearts in Atlantis. I have seen the strange movie with Anthony Hopkins, and I really didn't know what to make of the movie. I think you could go pretty low on this one, or high even. I'm gonna go B though, in the middle.
I would put it. This is really different because it's uneven. Let's put it slightly above Skeleton Crew,
All right, B
in
tier. I was
B.
right.
Yeah. Hearts in Atlantis. The problem is, so it's a novella and several short stories. The first novella is the one that the movie's based off. It's The Low Man in Yellow Coats, which also is a short story that directly connects to The Dark Tower. Excellent. One of his best pieces of writing. Love it to death.
Ooh.
And then I felt like every other, like that's like maybe a third of the book is that novella, and then the rest is like a series of short stories following the same character throughout his life.
Oh.
And I just found those pretty boring and unmemorable. Like I don't even
Oh.
remember what happens in them now.
Oh. So very
So that
mixed.
kind of
Okay.
brings it
Yeah.
down.
Yeah. I see. Interesting though. Interesting. Weird collection. All right. The nonfiction on writing. This gets high praise. In his readership and outside of it too. Like this is a very famous book on writing. I think it's going to be pretty high for you. Maybe A.
Yeah, I would put it in A underneath. Oh, this is difficult. It's hard to rate fiction against
Yeah.
nonfiction.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm gonna rate this. So I am an aspiring writer. Like I did read it partially to like get writing advice, but I don't know how much I directly applied to it from that, and it's really hard to quantify. So I'm going to rate it just as a reading experience, as a memoir slash
Mm-hmm.
insight
Yeah.
into an author's process. So I will put it slightly below The Wastelands
All
in A
right.
tier.
Solid though for some nonfiction. Do you think a non-aspiring writer like me would enjoy or get a lot out of it?
I think so. Like, so
Yeah.
knowing more about writing is good for reading. And I think
Yeah.
people kind of
Yeah.
neglect that. Like it really helps you focus in on things that are, and it's also not just straight writing advice. Like it's about his career, and like
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
memoir too. So there's a lot of like interesting parts in it, and his thoughts on like adaptations and how he writes and why he writes. I just think it's a really good book.
Yeah.
And also the audiobook is read by him. And I hate
Oh, okay.
him reading fiction, but
Oh
for
no.
nonfiction, it
Oh,
works
okay.
well. So
Good. Yeah. All right. Good on that. Yeah, I tend to like hearing the memoir authors reading their own stuff. That's good. All right, Dreamcatcher. I feel like this one is a very divisive one. I see this often near the bottom of people's King rankings. You can go against the grain, but I think I'm gonna throw this in D for you.
yeah, I'm gonna put it in D.
Ooh.
Like I think I need to reread it though. So, but for now, let's put it at the top of D. Um, so at the time I read it, I was not a very discerning reader in terms of like, um, now I would like rate things more as their whole. But what I remember about the book when I read it in like high school is I really liked it for like 70% of the book, maybe 60%, and then it started kind of losing me, and then I just really
Mm.
thought the last like
Ooh.
chunk was just ridiculously silly.
Yeah.
And that just like soured me on the whole book. And I don't think that would happen now. And the
Okay.
parts of the book that I remember liking, like I think that I would really like, and I know Kev really liked it. And apart from a couple books, Kev and I see very similarly on Stephen King books. So I want to give it another try now that I'm a better reader and see what I think. But I remember
Yeah.
like hating the ending of that one. So
Oh wow. Yeah. I endings are important to me. Like if it doesn't land with me at all, that really affects my overarching enjoyment of it. So that might be a pass
yeah,
for
I wouldn't
me.
recommend that to you. Like
Yeah.
it's a weird book. There's a lot of farting in it too. Also, just so much farting.
Well, this one I hear almost nothing about. Black House. I didn't even know this existed. Maybe Stephen King's Peter Straub collaboration. I'm gonna go C for this one for you.
It is a sequel to The Talisman.
Oh,
The main
okay.
character is adult now, and it is more directly tied to the Dark Tower, although not as connected as the ones that we were talking about before. I liked this better than The Talisman. I thought it was a pretty solid book. I would put it. What do we have at the top of C tier here right now?
Desperation, Regulators, Girl Love Top
Oh yeah,
Gordon,
I would put it
Horse
above
Claiborne.
The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon.
Okay, okay. Not terrible. Not in love with the book.
Yeah, like it was better. It's like again, I just don't think it's a series that I love, but it was good. Much
Yeah.
like I liked it. It
Okay.
was more concise than The Talisman.
Okay. What do we got? This is from a Buick 8. I feel like I just have a general negative perception of all of his car focused books. I feel like people don't love them, which is why I guess Christine Lowe. I'm gonna put this one in D.
So this book has a really low Goodreads rating. Like I'm gonna
Yeah.
look it up real quick. I think it's like a 3.4 or something like that. I really want to know because I love this book. I
Oh
think it
wow.
is
Okay.
my biggest hot take. A 3.48 with
That's low. Yeah.
72,000 ratings, which is just terrible. Um,
Wow.
and I've read this book 3 times and loved it each time. So I don't know what like, and I it's been a really long time, but like I just thought it was super interesting.
Yeah.
The setup of what so the premise of it is like this like 18-year-old is joining this police force, and his dad used to work for the force. His dad died, and so he's like the rookie on the job, and all these cops are keeping this stuff from him. And he goes into this shed, and there's this car, and everyone's like, "Don't touch the fucking car!" And he's like, "Listen, you got to tell me about this." And they're like, "All right, we got to start at the beginning." So the whole book is this like townhouse of cops telling him the story of this car, and so like it changes like different narrators throughout the time, where it's like a different person will take over a part of the story, and it's about how this car is like a portal, like weird things start happening around this car, and like strange disappearances and like random things they can't explain show up. And I just thought it's so interesting. Like I just thought it was so good.
Yeah.
Every time I read it. So I'm gonna put an A.
Wow.
Fuck the
Nice.
haters. I'm gonna put it what's right above Insomnia?
Nightmares and Dreamscapes. Night Shift on
Uh
writing.
I'm gonna put it below those two. So like above Insomnia.
All right. Nice. All right. That sounds like one I gotta try. All right,
You
from a
probably
Buick.
won't
Yeah,
like it. I
I
nobody
gotta
else likes it. Yeah.
I gotta undo that preconception I have that it's just like negatively received. All right, this one is Everything's Eventual. Is this short stories or novellas?
It's the short
Um,
stories. Let me double check the
I
titles.
mean, you've either been in B or A with the short stories. I'll go with B for this one. I don't hear much about it.
Okay.
Cool
Oh,
cover with
okay.
this
Okay.
blood
Okay.
dripping into the water glass.
This one is definitely less memorable. Like I think I read it later on because I remember more of the stories more clearly, but I don't like them as much. Like
Yeah.
uh yeah, like the death of Jack Hamilton, I remember. The Little Sister is of Illyria was a Dark Tower story that I really liked. And then the movie 1408 is taken from this short story collection. I'll put it in B tier. Maybe above Cujo.
Okay. Nice. All right. None of these short stories have been a giant bust for you. That's good so far. Ooh,
Yeah.
Wolves of the Kala. This is the point in Dark Tower where people start to veer off and start to not love things, or they're still on board. I'm gonna go bottom of B for this one for you.
This is a really weird book. The ending of it is great. Very, very back heavy for me. Um, Lots of Salem's Lot connections to the point where it just straight up at one point is just a summary of the book Salem's Lot.
Oh wow.
Do not recommend reading this before you have read Sailor. I know you have, but for people
Mhm.
in general, it's a good book. It feels a bit like a side quest. I'm gonna put it above. Let's put it above Cujo.
Okay.
Actually, above Everything's Eventual. One more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice. All right. We have Song of Susanna. This is by far the most divisive, uh, I think, Dark Tower book. People hate it. People don't mind it. People like it. If you're Philip Chase, let's see. For you, I don't know. I'm gonna guess maybe bottom of B.
Very close. I put it top of C.
Oh, okay.
I do think it's the worst Stephen King or Dark Tower book. And I know like I ranked the Gunslinger lower, but it's because I have more investment in the story and the characters and
Mm.
stuff. By the time we get to Song of Susanna, just a really strange book. It's so strange that like while reading it, I would just like, because I know my wife would never read the series, I would just tell her a thing going on, and she would just like have a horrified face, and then I would tell her a new thing, and she'd have a horrified face. I'm like, yeah, I know you never read in the series, so like, it's just here's some crazy shit that's going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also very short and weird, and just should have been like
Huh.
merged into the seventh book, I think.
Oh, interesting. Okay, weird. Does sound weird. And then we have The Dark Tower, the finale. I think you're going to be somewhat positive on this. I'm going to go bottom of A maybe for this one.
This was a mixed experience for me. Let's go. What's right next to Bag of Bones?
That's 4 Past Midnight and then Hearts in Atlantis.
Oh yeah. Let's put it. Let's put it above. Oh, this is difficult. This one's really hard, actually. Let's put it right there. We have it right now.
Mhm.
I don't know how I feel about the Last Dark Tower even 2 years later. It is difficult. There's a lot of things in it I just straight up don't like, and there's a lot of stuff I really love. And it had like a very emotional catharsis for some characters. I really like the end. Like that's the part that people tend to be divisive on, and I take the side where I think it's good.
Oh, okay.
But just a lot of the journey in this last book. Also, like the problem with the Dark Tower is it never consolidates to me. I think a lot of the books are in the like 3.5 to 4.5 star range to me, probably like averaging around 4. And I don't feel they feel cohesive. And part of it is because he wrote it over such a long period of time, and he's a discovery writer. So it's not even that he wrote it over a long time, but he kind of knew where he was going. It's that every time Stephen King sits down to write a book, he's discovering where he's bringing the story next. And it's different from where he was 10 years ago when he was discovering the story. And it just feels like it was never, The Dark Tower is like the weirdest, craziest, most insane, batshit, balls to the wall series of all time. Like there's nothing else like it. I recommend people read it just to experience the craziness of it.
Yeah.
It is so ambitious and so insane, and just such an experience. It feels like I don't love Dark Tower enough, but I respect the hell out of it.
Yeah, well, that sounds like it is the perfect dictionary entry for the phrase like greater than the sum of its parts.
Yes, I agree. And I want to reread it with full context, but I also know that there's a lot of stuff about it that I don't love, so it might be a few years. But it's just an experience to have.
Oh, I gotta have it. I gotta do it. All right, this one. All right, we're getting into. I think is the Colorado Kid. Is it the start of some like new publishing series he was doing?
Yeah, so the Colorado Kid is included in a short story later, so like we probably shouldn't have included it, but since you did, what do you think? Where do you go?
I have no. This does not get high praise in the wider thing. I'm gonna go C for this one.
I'll put it in D below Tommy Knockers.
Oh, okay.
Or sorry, not Tommy. Below Dreamcatcher. I mean.
Rage. Oh no, okay.
No, yeah. Yeah, just extremely unmemorable, very boring. I think it was the first of like the crime type books he started to do, and it just was kind of a little half baked. But it does get folded into a collection later because it's not very long. So
yeah. All right, and then Cell. Oh, this one gets dunked on. I think it's near the bottom of a lot of King rankings. I'm gonna maybe say Rage tier on Cell. Do we have another entry in the Rage tier? Yes.
Rage tier. Just a shit ass book. I'm gonna put it above Gerald's Game for a specific reason. So
Okay.
the top of Rage. And the reason is
Wait, I'm gonna go
the
grab my charger, but you talk.
sure, yeah. The premise of the story is interesting. Like anybody who's on a cell phone gets turned into a zombie, and then like so there's like a random zombie outbreak, and you have to deal with it. And the first like 50 pages of it are like so thriller intense, like just like turn the page, just have to know what happens. And then it gets really weird after that. Um, it just like the way he does zombies are really different, and also the book is really dated because cell phones have changed, which I know he couldn't have anticipated. And the characters are just kind of shitty. Just not like a. It just felt like he was like cell phones are the new thing, and people are addicted to them. What if I wrote a book about how people are addicted to their cell phones? And I'm like, okay, like I get it, but I don't know. I thought it was a bad book. And I actually remember like I read this book during a phase in high school where I was reading pretty much only Stephen King books. And I was loving like all of them. Like I was just liking so many of them. I don't think I read one that I didn't like. And then I read Cell, and that's what stopped me reading Stephen King for like a couple of years. I was like, oh, this guy fell off, and I just stopped. So
Is this the 90s or the 2000s? Do you think?
I think it's 2004.
Okay, early 2000s we're into. Got it. This is definitely a
Yeah,
divisive
boomer
period for him.
core premise for sure. Yeah,
This is definitely a divisive period for him for sure.
yeah.
Lacey's story, Lacey's story,
Lacey.
Lacey's story. I know this is his own like favorite book of his, but that it gets very mixed reactions. I think this could go anywhere for you. I'm gonna say C possibly.
Yeah, it's in C. And C tier is getting really hard for me because these are all so mid. Let's see. Lacey's story is just such a weirdo book, just full of weirdo-ness. Maybe below Black House.
Yeah.
So Lacey's story is like Stephen King was obviously in a car accident and he lived, but he started thinking about what would have happened if he died and how his wife would have to deal with all of his like crazy fans and like all the people like coming to her asking for like unpublished novels while
Whoa,
also
that's
dealing with her
heavy.
grief. So it was kind of like an exploration of like here's what my wife would have had to go through and like um an examination of her grief and dealing with dealing with the trauma of losing your spouse, but also having to deal with this extra layer of like them being in the public eye. And I think all of that is really good. And Lacey's character is great. I actually think she's a very strong character. All of the examinations with that is great. I think he like once again, this is one of the ones where he's just like, what if this evil villain was just evil villaining all over the place, and he would just be evil, and he's just like, oh, like I'm just gonna sit here and be evil, and I'm like, oh man. But
Oh no.
there's a secondary world in this where the Lacey's husband told her about this world that he could escape to sometimes. And it's very weird. And it's
Oh, I didn't know this was fantasy or speculative. Okay.
no, yeah, it's for sure. It's super speculative. He has this like language that he used with his brother because there was like a big thing that happened with his brother, and him and his brother would go into this place. And like the one that I hate is a bool hunt. So BOOL hunt. And you find out what that is throughout the book, but this like grown man will just be like a bool hunt. And I just it's just so much silly language in it. And I know Stephen King is trying to like talk about how couples have like their own language, right? Like I think that part is really well done, where it's like you talk to your spouse differently than anybody else on earth, and that you just have a shorthand. And I do think that aspect was captured well, but I also just found it super annoying. So
yeah, man, it sounds like this one might have benefited from being like more meditative, like kind of story that didn't have like a caricature villain or speculative elements. I don't know. It's a heavy premise, very
he
heavy
does
premise.
love to just lean into the just crazy over the top villain sometimes, and it just he doesn't have very many nuanced villains. I will say that as a lover of his works, most of his villains are very evil.
Okay, this one's interesting. I know nothing about Blaze. I think I've confused it in my mind with Rage and Firestarter.
Me too.
Because of the title.
Before I read it, yeah.
I hear nothing about this. I'm gonna go D on this one.
Actually, I quite like this one. So this was a trunk novel from Richard Bachman, where he released this in 2008, I think, and he had stopped being Richard Bachman for like 20 years at this point. But he found this like Richard Bachman book that he had never released, and so he just like cleaned it up a little bit and released it as a Stephen King book, as like an unfound, unpublished Richard Bachman
Oh,
book.
okay.
And the premise is this guy. I don't remember if his name is Blaze. I feel like his name is Blaze, but it's this guy who is a little bit on the special needs side of things. I don't remember
Mhm.
what his problem is, but there's a big crime that this guy does, and he is manipulated into doing it by people who are taking advantage of him and his like more
Oh,
simplistic
that's an
intelligence.
interesting premise. Okay, that's
And
really interesting.
I really liked the character, and some of it was like really tragic, and the ways the story goes, I thought was just very interesting and sad. And I think this is like one of his most slept on books because it's like pretty short and it's really good. I
Oh,
would put
wow.
it top of B over Bag of Bones.
All right, that sounds really good. That premise was interesting for sure. And okay, that has to go on the King TBR. That's one of those that was
Yeah.
not on my King TBR before. All right, love that. Duma Key. Okay, this one I don't really know much about. I think I've seen mixed reactions among the Stephen King fandom. For some reason, I feel like you like this a lot. I've probably seen that before. I'm gonna go A for this one for you.
This is actually not divisive in the Stephen King uh,
Oh,
fandom. It's interesting, and obviously, I haven't like. I mean, Stephen King fandom is huge. There's various opinions everywhere, but generally, from what I've seen, the people who read Duma Key love it.
ah,
It is a really good book. It's just like for whatever reason, I have to think it's because a lot of his books before that were just like not very good, and so a lot of people didn't
mm,
read this one. Like I know, Mike from Mike's Book Reviews hasn't read this one, and I
yeah,
think it's because he like took a break from Stephen King during this period, and I think that was a
yeah.
lot of people.
Also, the title, there's something about the title that is not very appealing to me, even as someone who's not read it. Like, I just am not attracted to this book with covers I've seen or the title. Something is just not pulling me to
Well,
it.
it's like Key West. It's like Duma Key. Like, like it's so the premise is this older guy who was a construction mogul and he loses his arm and he has to retire. So he retires to Duma Key. It's a small island in the Keys. And he starts painting and he discovers a new life painting, and he's painting with just one arm. And there's all this like haunted, weird shit happening in Duma Key, and in his house and stuff. And he has a neighbor that he becomes really good friends with. And I remember this neighbor very well because the neighbor said muchacho all the time. And I just thought that was the coolest word when I read it when I was like 15. And there was a phase where I was walking around and I was just like calling everybody muchacho. And my friends had to be like, Kyle, shut the fuck up. Stop calling people muchacho. And I was like, all right, I will.
Oh
But I
my.
think Duma Key is great. And I reread it last year and it holds up. It's more of like a slow, like character study, but
Mhm.
I think King shines at
With
that. I
with
will
some
put it,
dread.
yeah. And there's also a scene in it that scared the bejeebus out of me, so
Ooh,
that's always
ooh,
nice. I would put it um
top of
above,
A.
yeah, like below the dead zone.
Nice. All right, that one's definitely on my King TBR. Got to overcome my weird prejudice against it.
Yeah,
All right. Oh, I have never heard of this before. Just After Sunset. Is that a collection?
yeah. This is
Just
a
After
collection.
Sunset. Oh boy. I mean, you've liked the collections. I'm gonna go B then for this one. Do you know what's in this one?
I'm gonna look it up because if I just go off vibes, I'm gonna forget half the things in it. So this is his fifth short story collection. Oh, okay. So most of this I don't remember. Um, I have a very like there's 13 stories in it, and I don't remember most of them by name, only like two or three of them. However, it has the novella N in it. I gotta
Oh,
tell you, N
never heard of
is one
that.
of the most terrifying things I've ever read. It
Whoa.
just super scared the goddamn bejeebus out of me. I thought it was super good. Um, and that's like I think the biggest part of like I'm pretty sure that's the first like
Yeah.
25% of this book.
Wow.
And I still like vividly remember like lots of parts from that short
Mhm.
story, but the rest of it seems like it didn't stay in my mind. So I will put it maybe above Cujo.
All right. Short stories are clustering in the B tier, but it makes sense if they're a little mixed.
Yeah,
It's cool
yeah,
though
because
that
it's like
they're big. It's cool that there are big hits for you within all these collections. That's cool.
yeah, like he's not he's always good at short stories, but then like he puts in some that are just like, oh yeah, like chilling, and I'm like, oh well, we don't
Yeah.
need this one.
Yeah. Ooh, this is a big chunky boy that's divisive. Under the Dome. I do not know how you feel about this one. I'm gonna go. Wow, I don't know. I think this could be good or bad for you. I'm gonna go. Oh, I'm gonna go A for this one for you. I'm taking a risk.
So when you were on the phone, I told people what I was reading right now, and I'm currently rereading Under the Dome for the fourth time. Well, I guess,
Whoa.
yeah, it's my fourth read of Under the Dome. Uh, and I'm halfway through, and I started 3 days ago. So if that doesn't tell you
Wow.
that this book is a
Going up
fucking
here.
slammer,
Going up
it's
here
going in
into S
S
tier.
tier, going to the top of S tier,
Nice.
almost. No, not quite. I'm gonna put it above. Ooh, no, I don't love the ending. I'm gonna put it above Pet Cemetery.
Oh wow. Okay, we're going high with Under the Dome. Love it.
I love Under the Dome, and Kev is my ally. I know Kev's not here right now. He probably went back to work. Kev's my ally in this. This book is great. Um, I don't get the mid reactions to this book. All those people are wrong, and I don't think it's like hated. It is one of the books that's like it's like 950 pages, and the ending is not great. So there's two aspects to the ending. One is what ends up happening in the plot with the town, and the other is what is going on with why there's a dome in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And I think from vaguely talking with people about it that a lot of people hate the ending of the dome Under the Dome because of why there's a dome to begin with. I think that's perfectly fine. It worked for me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there has to be a reason, and the
Yeah.
reason is serviceable to what he's trying to
Yeah.
get through.
Yeah.
But the other part of it, what happens with the town, I just didn't love. King has a tendency to like write a town or a story for 900 pages and then look at his watch and be like, "Oh shit!" And then everything happened, and I'm like, "Buddy, like we could have had
Oh
more, release
boy.
a sequel or something." But yeah, I think some of his best town building, just so page turning, just like a
Ooh.
viscerally good, and I just like it's a head hopping book
Yeah.
but done in a way that I really like. Like it's always just like jumping to these different town people, and like I really feel like Chester's Mill is a town. Like
Yeah.
like who runs this store, and you know who's out here at the radio tower, and like I feel like I can visualize. And there is an actual town map at the beginning of the town, but I can
Oh, cool.
visualize the town and like the people moving around in it,
I mean, I
and
like
just
that
like
aspect of Salem's Lot, so it sounds like I would appreciate a lot of that from Under the Dome.
and
Okay.
it has two major villains, and what I like about it is they're both evil for evil's sake. Like I do, but I think so. I was thinking about this yesterday because I knew we were going to do this, and he has one of his most evil for evil's sake characters. And I will say, like, this is like the first chapter, like you get with this character. It tells you it's a younger character who has an undiagnosed brain tumor, and the brain tumor starts making him do crazier and crazier
Ooh.
things. And I think that super works for me because there's a reason why he's
Yeah,
getting
yeah, yeah.
worse and worse. And then he's also at odds with the other villain in a very interesting way. Like I think their goals, but also separations, kind of like
Oh,
weave
that's
together in a way
cool.
that makes the villains
Yeah,
really satisfying to me.
I've never even heard of a premise where there's kind of two villains that have like kind of competing goals. Like that's cool. That would be pretty fresh for me.
Well, I don't
I
want to
like
say
that.
like it's competing goals. Like they're on the same side, but
Mm,
they're both willing to double cross each other, and eventually, like
mm,
they're thinking like, oh, like I don't really like. They're just together because they have to be. But then you get their thoughts, and they both
yeah.
clearly are like planning to do other things against each other.
Oh,
It's
that's
just I
interesting.
just love it.
Oh, cool. Do you think
Yeah,
I would
that's
like this book? Do you think I would
yeah, it's
like it?
great. It's great.
Oh,
You should read
nice.
it absolutely. Yeah, the TV show people did not like. I watched 2 episodes of it and angrily DNF'd it, which I think does influence some people because the show's not good.
What is this? This is Full Dark No Stars. Is that another collection?
Yeah, that's another collection. Let me look up the.
Is it
Uh,
short stories?
oh, this is novellas. I remember this one.
Oh, novellas. Okay. I mean, you tend to really like his novellas. I might go near the top of B for this one. I don't know.
So the four novellas in this are 1922, Big Driver, Fair Extension, and A Good Marriage. All of these are good. 1922 and A Good Marriage are very good. Big Driver's kind of gross. And Fair Extension's good. Yeah, just like very solid, dependable. Let's see, what's an A here? I would put it above. Oh, that's Christine. I thought that was Desperation. I was like, that
Yeah.
shouldn't be there. I would put it below Christine in A.
Oh wow. Okay. I've never heard of this book or even the stories within it. So this is a surprise for me for sure. Oh, cool. Okay. That
Yeah,
one
that
does
one's
not get
good.
a lot of hype. That one does not get talked about at all in the wider reading sphere.
Yeah, I remember like it's maybe because the strongest story is the last one, and like the first and the last one are the strongest. So I feel like that is
Hmm.
a really good recipe for me remembering
Yeah.
it better. But
Yeah. All right, we have 11/22/63, one of my favorite books of all time, and I know you love it. I think this is going to the top of S tier.
It super is. We don't even have to really discuss it. Number one, that's his best book. Um, I so for the longest time I liked The Stand more, and on reread I like 11/22/63 more because I think it hit me differently in two different phases of my life, but extremely powerful all the way through both times. I love the ending. The romance in it is fantastic. Hits all the right notes. Has some like horrifying parts, some like memorable parts, some thriller parts. Has great historical fiction, research done well, and it also like steers away from most of the worst parts of his writing. Like there's not like weird random racism characters. There's not a villain that just monologues and is super extra villain. Um, just generally reins himself in. It's like the tightest, like not tightest in terms of like length because it's super long, but in terms of like weaknesses, like I feel like it has relatively little of his weaknesses.
I mean, I was amazed by it for such a long book, how page turnery it was, how like efficient it was in telling, like it was fast paced, it was emotionally gut punching, like all along the way, like incredible, incredible.
Yes, and we also got Jake to read it, and well, you technically did, but if you didn't,
Yeah.
I would have. And Jake also loved it, so let's go, victory for us.
Amazing book. Now this one I know almost nothing about. The Wind Through the Keyhole, Dark Tower
Oh, okay.
novella.
I was like,
It
I
does
have
not
no idea.
it does not get talked about much. I think that's probably it for negative reasons if people even read it. I'm gonna say this is a C tier for you.
Yeah, exactly where you just put it, bottom of C.
Oh, nice.
Actually, what's right above it? Roadwork. Put it above
Roadwork.
Roadwork because I at least remember it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's fine. It it's like Inception in the sense that it's a story within a story within a story for most
Mm.
of it, and I'm like, this is one layer too far for me. Like there,
Yeah.
so it takes place in between books 4 and 5, I believe, and like the characters are like sitting in a shelter because it's raining a lot, and then they're like, "Why don't you tell us a story?" And Roland's like,
Okay.
"All right, I'll tell you a story from my past." And so then he's telling you that story, but then while he's telling you that story,
Oh
they
no.
stop in that story to tell
Oh
another
no.
really
Oh
long
no.
story, and I'm like, "Oh,
Oh
I
no.
fucking don't care about this."
Oh
So
no. So this
yeah,
seems
just
superfluous to the series, is what I'm hearing.
yeah, I don't think it's necessary.
All right, this one is a weird one. I think this is after many years, like a sequel to The Shining. This is Doctor Sleep.
Yes.
I think it gets well received, but not like crazy. So I'm gonna put it in bottom B, maybe for you.
I'm gonna put it slightly above Christine. No, what? I'm gonna put it above
Oh,
Insomnia. Actually,
all
I
right.
liked it
So
quite a
this
bit.
is a good one for you. Okay.
Yeah, Doctor Sleep is really good. I love adult Danny Torrance. I love the new character that they're dealing with, and the concept of the villains is so cool. They're like not cool, like I mean they're horrifying, but like it's a good concept. Like it's like vampires that form a coven and they have to eat the essence of the people that have the shining. So like they travel around and find people that have the shining and they like take their essence and then that kills them and they live forever based off this
Ooh.
essence. And then so you get the perspective of these people and they're like yeah, they're technically evil. I mean, they're killing children for the most part. Like the whole premise of the story is that they're trying to track down this kid and Danny Torrance is trying to protect this kid, but at least the evil that is like by survival. Like they're like they have to be
Hmm.
able to do
Yeah,
this
yeah,
to live. So like while everything they're doing is evil and over the top and villainous and they're terrible, it's like they literally have it just hits better for
yeah,
me
yeah,
as a villain concept than like the fact that some
yeah.
guy's just evil
Evil for
because
evil's
he
sake.
needs to
Yeah.
be evil. Yeah. So really good book.
Oh,
Loved it.
that sounds like a solid horror premise. I like that. All right, this one gets mixed reviews. This is Joyland. Is this in the Colorado Kids series of things?
Yeah, it's like a thriller, not a thriller,
I
like
think I'm gonna go C for this one for you.
um Joyland is interesting in the sense that it takes place on a carnival, and I grew up on a carnival.
Mm.
So, it is good. Um, not one of my favorites. I don't know where I would put it. I would put it maybe top of C. Let's see, what do we have in C here? What's at the
Song
very
of
top of
Susanna,
C?
Desperation. Song of Susanna, Desperation Regulators, Black House,
It's better. Who? I'd put it right
Dark
below
Half.
right below
Dark
Song
Half
of
is
Susanna.
okay.
Yeah. Um, I like the ending of this book quite a bit, but I thought that most of the characters were really forgettable. and I don't think he did like the carnival stuff very well. And I'm just like,
Ah,
picky about that. So
yeah. Yeah, yeah. All right, makes sense. And this is Mr. Mercedes. I think this is the start of like a series of his,
yeah, this is
right?
the Bill Hodges trilogy.
Okay, this one I feel like gets well received, but it's like a whole nother style or series. So I don't know. I can imagine it falling anywhere for you. I'm gonna go B for you for this.
I'm gonna put it an A
Oh,
above.
nice. Okay.
Um, hmm. I think I liked it more than Doctor Sleep. No, I put it right below Doctor Sleep.
All right. Fan of
Yeah,
Mr.
just like a
Mercedes. This
really
is
good crime thriller book. I
mm,
really love Bill Hodges. It's the introduction of the Holly character that he has become obsessed with, which is a supporting
uh,
character. I quite like Holly as a character. I just wish that maybe, we didn't have so many books focusing on her. The like trio of characters that he forms in this book to solve crimes is really good, and the villain is like just one of his grossest villains, just like a real piece. There's such an
ooh,
icky scene in this book that I hated, but it does remind me of like a season of Dexter or something where like they're
mm,
trying to get the big bad, and you're getting the perspective of the murderer and what they're trying to do, and it's a very like cat and mouse type game. Really really solid
oh,
book. Liked it a lot.
that sounds. I've not really read any like mystery crime thrillers, but it sounds like I have it. I got it from a used bookstore and would be worth a try to see if
Yeah,
I
I
like
thought it
that
was
genre.
really good. Like I liked it quite a bit.
Cool. All right, Revival. Ooh, this one is a late King book that gets huge hype. I think this is going to be pretty high for you. I might say S tier for Revival for you.
Yeah, so I will put it bottom of S tier.
Oh, nice. Okay.
You know what? No, put it right below it.
Okay.
I'm trying to be a little bit more stingy with the S
Yeah, yeah.
tier, but Revival's great. Interestingly enough, the end of this book scared me so much that I donated the book and thought it was an awful book. Like I don't know, like it like switched genres so much. Like my wife still talks about this because like I was so scared that
Wow.
I couldn't sleep with the light off, and it's not the
Wow.
scariest thing that's ever happened in a Stephen King book. It's because the book isn't like. Since then, I've talked about it, and then some people are like, "Oh yeah, it's not that scary," because they go into it with that expectation. But it's less so that it's the most frightening thing that's ever happened in a King book, and more so that most of the book is not a horror book. Most of the
Yeah.
book is this guy who's like a washed up rock star that's trying to get his career back together, and he's been throughout his whole life having these weird interactions with this preacher that was in town when he was a kid. And every time he sees him, some like weird stuff kind of happens, and he lives his whole life, and he like falls in love with this girl, and it's like they miss each other a bunch of times, and he's like wistful about this whole situation. And then at the end you just find out a whole bunch of stuff, and it
Oh,
just it
oh
just
boy.
hit me in a I just didn't know that I shouldn't be reading it at 3 in the morning. And
Wow.
I still to this day, my wife was like, just tell me what happens at the end. Like I've never seen you like this. And I told her, and she still talks about it sometimes as like a
Oh
as
my
like a
god.
weird, scary thing. Just
Wow.
because she had no context. So
Wow.
I think it's a very, very strong later King book. That I would like to reread knowing where it's going, because I feel
Yeah, yeah.
like, and I
Oh
recently just
wow.
bought a
Okay.
hardcover of it, so I want to reread it soon.
Nice. I got to read that one, but I got to be prepared to be really scared towards the
Yeah, I
end.
feel like
And
because when people
oh
go into
boy.
it expecting that the ending is scary, it doesn't scare them as much. It's just that it was
Okay.
so
Okay.
unexpected.
Finders Keepers, is this the sequel to Mr. Mercedes?
This is the sequel.
All right. I don't hear much about these sequels. I might put this one in B.
I'm gonna put it directly above Mr. Mercedes.
Oh, better. Okay. Love it.
So Finders Keepers, um, is now they've so the first book, it's like the Bill Hodges retires from the police force, and he gets into like this cat and mouse thing with this killer that he never caught, and it was like eating him away. And then throughout the course of that book, he gets some friends that help him with solving crimes. And now in Finders Keepers, they have established a crime solving like investigative team called the Finders Keepers, like crew or whatever. And so this is them taking on their next case. So the dynamics of the book are put together well. I also think that the case is really fun. It's less gross, which really helps it. The premise is there's this like writer who he decided to retire. He's like in his 70s or whatever without finishing the series. And this guy gets like really upset that he doesn't get the end of the series. So he like goes in and like finds this guy's cabin and just like steals the manuscript and kills him.
Whoa.
Because he's so angry. And first of all, just kind of funny to read as a George R. R. Martin
Yeah.
fan. A little morbid there. But also just like I like it's kind of similar to Lisi's story where it's talking about the legacy of authors and how like at the end of their career, they're no longer in control of how their fandom deals with their material, which is clearly something that's been on Stephen King's mind. And I just thought it was executed a little bit better here than in Lisi's story.
Oh, nice. All right, this is cool that you're a fan of this mystery series I don't know much about. All right, what is this? Bazaar of Bad Dreams?
Yeah, this one I read more recently, so I feel like I do remember it, but let me just pull up
Man,
the short
I
stories
do
anyway.
not know what that is. Okay, that's short stories. Okay.
Yeah, it's a short story collection.
I don't know. It doesn't sound like you're thrilled with it and you read it recently. I'll go C for this one.
Let me see here. Oh yeah, okay. I'm correct. This is very mid. This is his worst short story collection, in my opinion. I would put this. Let's see what we have in C here. I'd maybe put it right below Carrie.
Ooh,
in
okay.
C tier.
Where's that? Carrie. I don't see Carrie.
It's the purple one near the end there.
Yeah.
Yeah, like none. Like again, I don't have strong feelings, but like I'm looking at this and I don't even remember most of these. I remember Mile
Yeah.
81. That one was good. But Year was good. But most of these are just fine, or I don't remember them at all. So just kind of, and it makes sense because since I've been looking at these titles, you see where they were originally published. And this is the one where like he's publishing he's originally writing most of these in the mid 2000s, which is when he's releasing his most inconsistent works. So
yeah. All right, that's not the greatest King period. All right, then we have End of Watch. Ooh, I don't know what that is. Is that the end of the trilogy?
That's the final of the trilogy. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Since you've liked those other two, I'll go around A for this one. To be near those.
This one is let's put it below Desperation and the Regulators in C.
Oh, way down. Okay. Not up to the standard of the other two.
The third book is a fantasy book. Which like I don't agree that he just like a character randomly just has like psychic powers and convinces people to start killing themselves. And it just like I'm like, I'm all down for Stephen King, like doing weird stuff, but I'm like, I don't think you should establish a series as like a crime thriller series, and then in the third book, be like, actually, we're gonna do some fantasy here. Like, I just feel like that's a really weird, jarring thing to do.
Yeah.
I do think the end of the book is like a good wrap up to the trilogy. Like, I thought it was good, but I just so hated the plot line of this book that it bothered the hell out of me.
That's odd. Do you need to read this to get closure on the first two books?
Yes and no. Like I think you could read the first two and just be like it's not telling one story.
Yeah.
So like
it's
fine, but it does finish the trilogy. Like I would not like if you read the first two, and then you went to read The Outsider, like it would spoil End of Watch and like leave out some context. So you kind of do depending on how completionist you want to be.
Yeah. Is this not well received by the general Stephen King?
I would say so. Yeah. Like I mostly see people not like it.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Makes sense with how he changed it up. All right. This is Sleeping Beauties, which is, I think you've read this or read some of it by Stephen King and his son.
Owen King. So this is the one I've barely read. I almost thought about slogging through it as a completionist, but I changed my mind and recategorized it, and here's why. Eventually I will die, and I want to spend the least amount of time suffering as possible, and this book sucks. So I decided I'm going to put it in Rage because I read enough of it to not like it. But I didn't read that much of it, and I kind of just bailed on it early, so we'll put it at the top of Rage. And the reason that I decided to recategorize it is twofold. One, it's the only book he's co-written with his son. and it's not his good son. Like Joe Hill is a really good writer, and this was Owen King's first release, and so I originally tried reading it once, and I wasn't really vibing with it, so I put it down. And then after that, I watched the Stand miniseries, the new one, which Owen King was a
Yeah.
writer on, and that was
Yeah.
terrible. I'm like, how
Oh
could you
god.
ruin your dad's livelihood like this? How dare you? And then
Oh no.
Owen King released his first book by himself, and I read that as an arc when it came out. I can't remember the name of it because it was really, really bad. But it was about like cats, and I'm gonna look it up actually because I hated it, and I wanna hate accurately. The
Does this guy have like
curator.
a like? Does this guy have a successful writing career? Owen
No,
King?
not at all. Oh
Oh
my
no. Oh.
god, it's got even worse. So the curator by Owen King has a 2.93 on Goodreads with 2,500 ratings. So I am not the only one who hated this book. And so after I decided to finish all of Stephen King's books, I was like, I tried to go back to Sleeping Beauties again, and I just hated it. And I was like, you know what? I think this is just straight up him like putting his name on it
Yeah.
because he wants to help his son, and his son has sucked at everything else I've read. So this is just an Owen King book. So I just decided I don't
Yeah.
count it anymore.
It might
So
be. It might be just an
yeah.
Owen King book, basically. All right, that's a fascinating thing in his oeuvre for completionists. All right, The Outsider. I've heard of this. I don't know much about it. You've liked some of the other mystery stuff. I'm gonna go A for this one.
Yeah, The Outsider is really good. I do think it flounders in the end there. Let's put it. Did I like it more than Blaze? Did I like it more than Christine? This is tough. This is really tough to rank 70 something books.
Yeah.
Let's put it right where you have it, bottom of A.
So a fan.
You know what? No, sorry, we're gonna move it to below Blaze because I do think the
Okay.
ending really peters out, and I think that does it a
Mixed.
disservice. So
Mixed, but slightly positive.
the beginning of The Outsider is fantastic, just top tier King. Most of the book is really good. It features Holly as a supporting character. In like her first outside of the Bill Hodges trilogy, she gets called in as part of the Finders Keepers detective agency to help with this case. Basically, The Outsider is this kid gets horrifically killed, just brutal, and
Ooh.
people have eyewitnesses of this. Like the town coach, everybody likes him, played by Jason Bateman in the miniseries, just like a good guy. Everybody's shocked and appalled that this would be the guy that would do this horrific thing. And then he has an ironclad alibi that he wasn't there. There's video evidence of him being in another town when this happened, but there's pretty concrete proof that people saw him kill. There's many people who saw him kill,
Oh,
not many, several people who saw him kill this kid, and the evidence is mixed at best. So people, the town policeman is trying to figure out what's actually going on because he believes that this guy did not kill this kid.
Is it a
Really?
spec fic book? Is it
Yes,
spec fic? Yeah.
it is
Okay.
spec fic.
That's a cool premise. I like if you
And
go in knowing that it's spec fic. I like it.
yes, and it builds on. We'll talk about this a little bit later in the next Holly thing that we talk about. It builds on this growing idea of Holly interacting with the unknown in the world and like how that affects her in like a long-term character arc way. But the ending of this book I didn't really like. It kind of it peters out in a way that I didn't find very satisfying. So that would be my draw against it.
Intriguing premise. I like that premise though.
Yeah.
All right,
I would
I
say
know
that's the
nothing about
best
this.
of like
Yeah.
his crime-y stuff. Like I think
Oh,
it's a
okay.
good case and interesting.
Yeah. I don't know what this is. Is this a collection? Elevation?
No, it's a short book.
That's a novel. Oh wow. I did not know this existed. Considering the lack of hype and buzz it gets, I'll throw this in maybe I go strong. I go D. I go D for this one.
It is D. Let's see.
Oh wow.
I would put this below Firestarter.
Wow, this is one of the only King novels I have literally just wasn't there was a novel.
I think it's like a page past novella length. Like it's like he was like, I'm gonna make a novel, and then he had a novella, and they're like, King, we have to market this as a novel, and he added 1-page bullshit. Yeah, it's remarkably unmemorable. It's like,
oh wow,
I don't. There's nothing. It's not even unmemorable because it's so nothing that I remember everything that happened in it, which is nothing. Like it shouldn't have been a book. Like I don't understand why he released it.
Oh, I love it. I love that. Oh man. What is it? Does it have a premise? What's the premise of
Uh,
Elevation?
yeah, it's like this. People start elevating. Let me actually look it up real quick because I forget the exact. I
So
remember the
it
ending.
is specfic.
I think it's magical realism. If I was really gonna.
I'm fascinated,
Oh
but I've
yeah,
never heard
this
of this.
guy is losing weight. Okay, I do remember this. So it's kind of like thinner. He keeps losing weight, and then eventually, like he's afraid he's gonna like float away or some shit. You know what? Maybe I don't remember this book very well. I'm reading this premise. I'm reading this premise. I don't remember half this fucking premise, man. Like I
But
don't
you
know
read
it
it?
all.
You think you did read it?
Oh, I'm 100% sure I read it.
Yeah.
I
Wow. So
it just is
forgettable.
gone.
So forgettable.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh
Like even
wow.
it's telling me like it took place in Castle Rock, and under penalty of death, I would not have known that this took place in Castle
Wow.
Rock. Like I did not know.
Where's that?
So
Where else is that setting
oh, so Castle
used?
Rock is his like most famous setting. Like it's he's went back to that town plenty of times. So like Needful Things takes place there. Parts of Dead Zone, um, the Dark Half. There's lots of his books
Oh,
take
okay.
place in or Castle Rock is mentioned in like 70% of his books.
I cannot even see the title of this one. I've never heard of this one either.
Is
This is
this
a
Gwendy's?
collaboration with
Yeah, Gwendy's
Richard
final task or
Chismer.
whatever.
Gwendy's Button Box. What
Okay,
is
so that's
that?
the first one. Okay, so it's a weird trilogy where he and Richard Chismer wrote a book, um, and then Richard Chismer had a sequel idea, and he asked. So in the first book, Gwendy is a kid, and then
Yeah.
in the second book, he's like, "What if we had her as an adult?" And then Stephen King didn't have time, so then Richard Chismer wrote the second one, and then for the
Huh.
third one, they were like, "Well, what if we have Gwendy as an old woman?" And then they came back together to write
Oh wow.
um,
I've
to
never
write
heard
it.
of this existence of this thing. I'm gonna put it in
So
B. Oh,
yeah, so it is not quite D, but it is bottom of C. I think it's fine. It's pretty forgettable. I liked the premise of it, and I thought Gwendy was a really good character, but I don't think it ever did. Like, it's very short, and it never did enough with the premise to justify reading it.
yeah.
And that's it. Yeah.
I am surprised. I've never heard of some of these. All right, this one I've seen in bookstores and Target for the last bunch of years as a recent novel of his. The premise sounded cool, The Institute, and it does not get great reception on the fandom. I'm gonna put this in C for you.
Yeah, it would be C. Let's see here. Maybe above Joyland. It's around the top of C, I would say. Actually,
Okay.
no, yeah, that's right. I would say that. Um, it's like good. It's so inoffensive. Like, and I mean that like it's like every part of the book is passably good, but there's nothing that
Yeah.
stands out about it as like something you should read. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like it's taken several different. It feels kind of like capitalizing on Stranger Things, and maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but it feels like he watched Stranger Things and was like, I could do something like that, and
Oh,
that's
interesting.
basically.
Okay.
But it's just not as good as Stranger Things. I don't know. Like it's
Yeah.
perfectly serviceable, but that's about it.
Yeah. Cool cover. I like it. Yeah. I'm
Yeah, so
interested
the
in
premise
because
the
yeah.
premise of the institute is that all these kids are taken to this institute, and like they have different types of special powers, and there's this guy who sees one of the kids get abducted, and he promises that he'll get him out. And he's like not a guy that knew him. He's just
Mm.
like I think he was like a random
Oh.
passerby or something, and he like goes on a quest to try to get these kids out, and you get his perspective and then also the kid's perspective in the institute.
Oh. Yeah. I mean, cool premise, but it doesn't seem to be one that's a must read. Oh well.
For sure.
All right. If it bleeds, this got some buzz when it came out, but not like best ever King Collection buzz. I'm gonna put it in B for you.
Yeah, I'll put it in B, maybe below. What's right under Bag of Bones?
That is 4 Past Midnight and Hearts in Atlantis.
I'll put it below 4 Past Midnight, so
Above Hearts
above
in
Hearts in
Atlantis. All right.
Atlantis. So this has the title short story is, or I think it's a collection of novellas actually. Yeah, it's like 4 novellas. The title one is a Holly novella where she deals with yet another like weirdo, um, a type of killer that seems inhuman, and now she's dealt with this enough times that she's starting to do research into what's going on, and it develops into a kind of thing where it seems like he's taking Holly in like a journey to find and eradicate different types of predators on humanity.
Mhm.
Really solid novella. There's also a movie being made of the life of Chuck, which is coming out. Uh, really great cast. It's made by Mike Flanagan. It's the first Stephen King Mike Flanagan series that is being released that isn't horror, and it's been getting a lot of buzz. So I'm really excited for it. And the other stories, let me make sure they're the ones I'm thinking of here. 4 previously published novellas: Mr. Harrigan's Phone, yeah, and then Rat. Rat is fine. And then Mr. Harrigan's Phone has a Netflix adaptation that got a bit of buzz when it came out. I really like Mr. Harrigan's Phone. Just an overall solid, dependable group of novellas.
Wow, talk about like an author who doesn't have to worry about struggling to get adaptations made of his
He has
stuff. Oh
he has
my
the most
God.
adaptations of anybody.
Wow. Yeah, they're just going to the king well for adaptations. All right, that sounds like mixed but positive overall. All right, later. This one I've seen people like, not love. I'll go maybe a top of C near Joyland for this one.
No, I put it top of B, right?
Oh, nice. Okay, very
Right above Blaze.
nice. All right, like that one.
It's pretty short. It came out the same year as Billy Summers, and was like noticeably different from Billy Summers. I really like the main character. It is a example of a short but sweet novel where like all the characters are in it. Like there's not very many, but it's good, and it's the idea of this kid dealing with his mom and his mom's friend, and growing up with. I don't want to spoil anything because it's so short.
Mhm.
It is a little speculative fiction, like I would say, like magical realism, and it ties into
Yeah.
some of his older works in a way that people appreciated. But I just thought it was a really enjoyable like case book. He
Yeah.
can see. Um, he has an ability that can make him. I guess he can see the future. Is the easiest way of. He can see parts of the future.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah.
Cool. I like to see that getting some love. All right, Billy Summers. This one came out to some divisive reactions, very topical, political. People don't love it. I might go C for you for this one.
I would put it in B tier, but like
B.
lower
Okay. Okay.
B. Maybe below Just After Sunset. Actually below
Okay.
Cujo. I'd put it one more
Below
below
Cujo. Yeah.
Cujo. Um, the the premise of the book doesn't really live up to what the book is. I feel like it's very much like um he meets this girl who's been abused, and he wants to like help get revenge for her. He's like an assassin that's retiring to a town, or like a hitman, I guess. Um, I feel like it had too many ideas in it, if that makes sense. Like it had like a bunch
Mm,
of like half-baked things, and
yeah.
it was very like political just for the sake of it. But I thought the core story was good, and the relationship between the two was good. But I don't remember the ending very well, which suggests that it maybe petered out to me.
Yeah. Okay. Overall, though, good that it was positive, more positive than not. All right, here we have the weird trilogy
So this is the
finale,
third book. Yeah.
Gwendy's Final Task. Man, I'm probably gonna go bottom of C next to the first book for that one.
Nah, it's in D. It's below
Oh,
what's the Colorado Kid, and then what's the next one?
Cycle of the Werewolf.
Oh, it's below Cycle of the Werewolf for sure. Yeah, no, this book sucks. I didn't like it at all. It just felt very like forgettable and useless, and just like it felt like he wanted to return to this to finish it more than he wanted to actually have a
Yeah,
story with it. Like it
yeah,
just was.
yeah.
I don't recommend this
Oh boy,
trilogy.
yeah. Okay, don't read the Gwendy trilogy, the collab trilogy. All right, got that. Fairy Tale. I have my copy on the shelf over here, and this one, everyone that read it that I saw had the same exact reaction where they're like, loved the slice of life beginning part, and then once they got fantasy, did not like it. So I don't know. People are mixed on it. I'm gonna go B for you.
That is my exact thoughts on that book. Like, because everybody felt the same way that I saw, but I would put it in top of C, maybe,
Okay.
above Song of Susanna. The first like 100 pages of that book are just phenomenal, and Radar is such a good dog. Like, I mean, it should be higher just for Radar, but it's actually impressive how much he managed to ruin my goodwill throughout that story by just being really boring. Like, it's just a dull way. It's just a dull
Yeah.
way of handling that story, and it's a good premise, and I wish that he did it better. I don't know what else to
Oh,
say about it.
yeah. That's a shame. I was pretty pumped for that, but I never actually ended up reading it, and I saw the mixed reactions, and oh well.
It
I'll
was
get
really
to it at some
fun.
point.
Like, I think that's the biggest. Like, I mean, it wasn't like an official buddy read, but I wasn't gonna read it right away either. But the amount of people that I knew reading that book on release day was huge. Like, I bet I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
reading it at the same time as like 50 people that I knew, like across different discords. And I remember Mike finished it first, and then Mike was like loving it, and then he was the canary in the coal mine, because then he was just like, I'm not feeling this anymore. And I was like, Mike, I don't believe you. And then, God damn it, I believed him. So, just
And the
just a shame.
cover's really cool, like, the title,
The
like,
cover is great. I
I was
actually got
yeah,
it. I got it from a free library, and I'd already read it. And I was like, you know what? I like this cover enough that I'll get this and keep it because it's a dope cover.
yeah. No, it's really, really sharp looking, but sad that it didn't become, like, a new recent King masterpiece kinda thing. Like, I'm sad that didn't rise to
Yeah.
above this late career stuff. Alright, we have Holly, which also does not seem to be getting huge rave reviews. I'm gonna go C tier for this one for you.
Yes, it is C tier. And also it's disappointing, like, um in the arc of Holly. Like, it's like, again, it's not a character I'm super invested in, but I do like her. Like, I think he's overusing her, but I never feel like she's a character that doesn't deserve
Mhm.
some spotlight. I just wish I don't know. He only has so many books left in him, and I don't think this one was necessary.
Yeah.
But even beyond that, it's like the arc of Holly is in the Bill Hodges trilogy. She realizes that there's some like not like some supernatural elements to the world. And then in The Outsider, she meets another one. And then in If It Bleeds, she meets a different one. And she does all this research into like different ways that like evil things permeate the world. And she's like trying to do something about it. And then Holly is straight up a crime thriller,
Mm.
which is kind of ironically
Huh.
the opposite of how the Bill Hodges trilogy worked,
Yeah, yeah.
where it's like now she's being set up to deal with all these like supernatural things. And it's like, what if there was just like a murder and she had to figure it out? So
Huh,
it's fine. It has no tension because like chapter 3 tells you who the murderers are and why
huh, that's
they
weird.
exist, and it's super political. Like, and like just it's just like every buzzword about COVID is in it, and it's just exhausting. So
Yeah.
I would put
Brand
this near
end
the
of
bottom of
watch?
C.
Oh, bottom of C, okay.
I would put it below the Talisman.
That's a shame that his some of his recent stuff has just not been hitting. Alright, and then this collection, if you like no, you like it darker, which seems to be getting lots of rave reviews in the Stephen King world, so I'm gonna possibly go A for this one for you.
It is A. I would
Oh,
put
nice.
it above. Ooh, above Finders Keepers.
Ooh, alright, solid for a collection for him.
Yeah, so Rattlesnakes, which is the sequel to Cujo, is phenomenal. Extremely good or like novella, I guess, with just a really terrifying story, but like in a meaningful way. It's one of the creepiest things he's ever written, I think, and it also like kind of connects to Doom McKee in a way. So it's like connecting two different King stories in a way. Just really loved it. Rattlesnakes is great. Danny Coughlin's Bad Dream is also, or no, sorry, not Danny. The last one, The Answer Man. The Answer Man is the end novella, also super excellent. Um,
Mhm.
love that. Could have had a whole other story. That's the thing where like that
Mm.
premise he could just rewrite that premise featuring another character, and I would love it. It's the idea of like you find this guy in the woods and he's the answer man, and he will answer. You pay whatever money he thinks that you can afford in that moment, and you have 5 minutes to ask him as many questions as you want, and he will
Whoa,
tell
that's a
you,
cool
and he
premise.
and he will tell you the answers. And so this guy comes across the answer man at 3 different points in his life,
Oh, whoa.
Just a really good story. Loved it.
Oh, that's
Um,
cool. I gotta read that.
the there's a bunch of like shorter stories in it that are really good. Also, there's a lot of character or a lot of stories in this with old men, which I just think is funny because Stephen King's so old. It's like I think
Yeah.
almost every story has like some 70-year-old man complaining about being 70, and I'm like, I get it, Stevie, but yeah, just really
Is
good
the
books.
Cujo thing needed to be read after the novel Cujo?
Needed no, it will spoil Cujo.
Oh, okay. Well, okay.
Like you can if you have no interest in
Yeah.
Cujo or you don't care about knowing the ending, like Rattlesnakes is better. So it's just one of the characters from Cujo, 40 years later.
Ah, I see. I see.
So
Yeah.
you kind of get an update on what they've been doing since Cujo, and it spoils all of Cujo, but you don't need it to understand the story of Rattlesnakes.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Do you think I would like Cujo
I
on its
don't know.
own? Oh, okay.
It's a
Maybe I
little
gotta
messy.
try
I,
to.
I think it's
Yeah.
good. Like I think it's worth reading. I would not prioritize it as one of your first.
All right. Well, that's the end. Man, how many? That's a lot of books, and some of these are books within books, and you have done it all. And we have the Rage tier down here for the absolute stinkers. The Owen King book, Stell, Gerald's Game, Tommyknockers, Rage. You can also look through and see if you want to adjust any rankings. At the top, in S tier, we have 11/22/63, The Stand, Unabridged, Salem's Lot, The Shining, The Green Mile, Under the Dome, Pet Cemetery, Different Seasons, the novellas, with The Body and Rita Hayworth, The Shawshank Redemption, At Pupil. We have The Long Walk, Misery, Drawing of the Three. Very close to S tier, we have It, Revival and Dead Zone, Doom McKee. Then into A, we got Wizard and Glass, Wasteland, some of those middle Dark Tower books. On Writing, memoir. Night Shift, some collections, Night Shift, Nightmares, Dreamscapes. From Buick 8, hot take on a book that is often disliked. And then Doctor Sleep, You Like Darker, the first two books of the Bill Hodges trilogy, Insomnia, Christine, and Full Darkness Stars. All these are the ones Kyle loves. Anything you
Yeah,
see in here that you want to
no, those are
change,
pretty good.
adjust?
I'm sure that I could change them around a little, but like it's close enough, and at a certain point, we're just being picky for the sake of it. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
those are for sure my favorite Stephen King books.
We got a lot kind of in the middle where it's mixed, and then some stinkers down here. In D, we have Dreamcatcher, The Colorado Kid, Cycle of the Werewolf, Gwendy's Final Task, Needful Things, Firestarter, Elevation, which he basically does not remember reading, and then this Dance Macabre nonfiction book as well. So this was fun for me to see because I didn't know where
Yeah,
you fell on a lot of these. And
it's
yeah.
difficult to rank this many books. Like it's like, but I think I'm sold. Like I could move around the C tier for the rest of my life. Like they're all so like,
Yeah.
like so that's not worth it to me. But like the top and the bottoms, I feel strongly about. So the rest are in the same relative headspace.
This is great. I've definitely added some to my King TBR that weren't on before. I got to do Doom McKee, Dead Zone,
Yeah,
maybe The
Dead
Long
Zone's
Walk
great.
very soon. I want to do that one soon. From a Buke 8 was not really on my radar to read, but I want to read that. And
Uh,
Christine.
Ian has a question. I'm curious, would you consider this a good representation of the overall quality of the books or just the scale of best king to worst king? I mean, obviously it's just my opinions on it. Um, like for instance, Needful Things, I think is almost certainly better than the credit I give it based on how many other people really like it. But I'm not gonna just be like, well, other people really like it, so therefore I'll rank it higher. Like I just didn't like it. Oh, like so is King's C everyone else's B, or is it pretty comparable? No, no, no. Lots of King's books suck. Like just because he's my favorite author doesn't mean he gets any slide here. He has 77 books or something like that. I counted when I finished them, and some of them are just super not memorable. And so his C list is everybody else's C list too. But I would say that, the top tier, I mean, like he's one of my favorite authors. So like all of S tier and most of A tier, I think are just like super good books. So like I gave all of those 5 stars. I probably stopped giving 5 stars. These would probably not like if I was to pull out my ratings, I'm sure some of them are a little bit weird. Like I bet I have some of the 4 stars higher than you'd think, or like I might have a 5 star that I put in B or something like that. But as far as I can remember off the top of my head, I think the last one to get 5 stars for me would be later at the top of B. So I think Blaze and everything below it got 4 stars, but I could be a little wrong there.
Yeah, and B was this odd tier for you, whereas a lot of ones that you liked a lot of, but were mixed on it for one reason or another, or for some of the stories and the collections, or
Yeah, for
this
sure, and
seemed
that
like B
that
was
makes sense.
fairly solid for you, but not. There's some big flaws with the reading experiences.
Yeah, like I think about Hearts of Atlantis. Hearts of Atlantis being in B really upsets me, but it has to be because the first third of that book is incredible, and then it just falls apart with the short story. Not even falls apart. I just find them like uninteresting.
And I learned about new books like Blaze. I did not know about, but that sounded like a really interesting premise. And Dead Zone, like I said, like this was cool. And some of these that I had never heard of and that you disliked, I'm like, okay, maybe I don't need to really be aware of them.
Yeah.
Like Cycle of the Werewolf, I know zilch about, but does not sound like an
Funny story about
essential
Cycle of the Werewolf. Before my
thing.
wife and I started dating, she was like, "I read a Stephen King book, uh, like in high school, and I just didn't like it." And I was like, "Well, what book is it?" And she was like, "It had like a red cover." And I was like, "There's so many." And we went through I was literally like looking at all the possible red covers. She's like, "No, it's not that. It's not that." And she was describing like the beginning of the book to me, and I was like, I've never read that. Like, are you sure it wasn't like a short story collection? And then when I was going through, I read the first couple pages of the Cycle of the Werewolf. I'm like, is this what it was? And I read the beginning to her. She's like, that's the one. I'm like, why would you read this mid ass shit as your first Stephen King book? And she didn't like it, so she's just been hitting
Oh
strikes with
man.
him.
But this is good for me because I have some of these from used bookstores. Like I randomly have Gerald's Game and Firestarter and Needful Things. So it's like I don't need to prioritize some of these when they're a
Oh,
lot
dude,
on
I'm
your
I'm
top
pretty
two
confident
tiers.
you will not like Gerald's Game. Like, I would
Yeah,
I would recommend unhauling it
yeah.
personally, but
But like I gotta read freaking The Stand and The Shining, Green Mile, Under the Dome, Long Walk, Misery, Dark Tower series. I have
yeah.
so many
In my S tier, you've
hits.
only read 2, right? You've read 11, 22, 63, and Pet Cemetery?
And Salem Slot. Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah, okay. Yeah. All
So
right. Well, I'm super
I got
hungry,
a long way to go. Me too. Me
and
too.
but this was great. I thank you for recommending doing this. I know Jake earlier said that he came up with it. I don't remember this. I think it's revisionist history, Jake. But
Yeah,
regardless, it was one of the two of you, and it was a good idea. It was a lot of fun.
it was
But I'm
great.
gonna go. Thank you so much, Ben, for doing this and for being my mover of the tiers. And maybe one day we'll do it again with a shorter amount of books. And everybody, thanks for popping in. And if you have any questions about Stephen King books that you haven't read, let me know, and I will try to do my best to answer them. See you guys later.
See ya.